Good morning, everybody. Yeah, welcome to the second day of the Feagin Leadership Forum. I'm not sure we could top yesterday, although the singing last night, and for those of you who were here for Luke Powery, the singing this morning has elevated us to a new level. It's really been a phenomenal yesterday and this morning so far, and the rest of the morning is only going to get better. So I'm not going to hold us back one bit. I'm just going to turn it over to Leah. So Leah, take it over.
Morning. I'm coming over here because I don't have a lav mic this morning. Let's see here. All right, there's my stuff. So we had a pretty good day yesterday, huh? I know, as Dean said, yeah. I will admit, it was lovely to have so many people come up to me at Dean's house last night and thank me for the wonderful program yesterday. And really, Dean and Joe just make it easy for me because of the people that they bring together for this. So I'm glad that we all got to experience that together. So what I would like to do this morning is do a little bit of reflection on yesterday as a way to bring us into day two and what we'll get to experience today. So given the theme of influence without authority, I would say yesterday we got to see a number of angles on this, again, from different genres, different areas, yet there were themes that pulled through all of them. And I wanted to review some of the themes, at least that I pulled out of those conversations, as a way to get us back into what we're doing together. So the first theme that I heard was about finding an idea that you're passionate about. If you're going to lean in and look to influence and look to make something happen, you really need to find something that you're passionate about. Of course, this came through loudly and clearly in Derek and Jay's presentations, right? Our two gentlemen from Johnson & Johnson, with Derek being inspired by a Peruvian medical volunteer to go launch a crowdsourcing site, a crowdfunding site using J&J's infrastructure to do things that these NGOs wouldn't be able to do on their own. And Jay, because of his own experience with grieving, recognizing that his organization needed to do that better, particularly in light of the experience that he had after his child being born, right? These fantastic benefits that J&J gives for childbirth, but not for this other huge emotional experience that we have in our lives. But we also heard this theme of finding something that you're passionate about from the scholars. Right? It wasn't just our speakers, it was also from the scholars who we give very little guidance to in terms of what they should do for their big group projects. And in our first, we heard how exploring what seems like just opposing goals in a profit model for healthcare versus patient-centeredness doesn't need to be diametrically opposed. Right? If you can lean in and figure out where there are common goals, where those goals can meet. And from the second team, we explored how to make low English proficiency patient experience in the ED, and frankly, the experience for those professionals who are serving those low English proficiency patients even better. Right? Really in a way that we had zero, one would think, ability to influence a massive thing like EPIC. Because, as they said in their reflections, leaders who believe in their causes unite others around their cause. I loved that quote, so thank you for putting it up there, which gets me to my second theme. Once you've found something that you're passionate about, you need help. So it's not something that you can do on your own. You need to unite other people around that and both ask for help and give help, right? As two ways to help influence without authority. So specifically, all of our speakers talked about the number of conversations that they had along the way, that it just takes a lot of discussion, a lot of conversations along the way, both to make sense of the challenges and to focus their visions on what was possible, but also to remove roadblocks or make progress against the solutions that they were trying to put in place. Derek and our ED scholar team both talked about the value of having a clear vision as a way to get that help, right? As a way to help people see how whatever they had to offer could make a difference in achieving what these two wanted to achieve. And Jay talked about persistence, right? Just the value of not giving up when getting that help maybe got a little tough. How to continue having more and more of those conversations. You know, and even General Dempsey talked about help he received along the way. You know, influence from a place he never expected it. His nun from Wisconsin out in the middle of Germany. Right, helping him think about the kind of leader he needed to be for his people. Which brings me to the final theme that I heard in yesterday's speakers. And again, in General Dempsey's words, a leader's primary job is to get the people who are following you to feel like they belong. A leader's primary job is to get the people who are following you to feel like they belong. And while General Dempsey emphasized this as table stakes for people who are in a leadership role, I think it also came through loudly and clearly in the messages of our other speakers who were doing what I call leading from the center. Right, leading from a position without authority or from a place where people weren't necessarily expecting us to help others feel like they belong. We heard, again through our Johnson & Johnson speakers, they have something at J&J called the Office of Creative Engagement that does this for all of their employees. It helps them feel like they are part of a place where creativity and curiosity and entrepreneurship is not just expected, but encouraged. And it makes these people feel like they belong to something that's bigger than them. And you saw what came out of that, right? These amazing ideas and willingness to lean in and create something that Derek and Jay really had no business creating. Given where they sat in the organization as an engineer and an IT guy. And you heard that from our scholar teams as well. You know, in the words of our canoe rowing team, delegation, trust, communication, and utilizing everyone's skills. Utilizing everyone's skills was critical to their success. And doing that made everyone feel like they had something to offer. They had something to give in getting that work done. So for me, the best part is that we're only halfway there. Right? We have a whole nother day of getting to hear 2 more scholar presentations, as well as getting to hear from 3 physicians and a coach, who I imagine are going to have some really interesting stories to tell about their experiences with influencing without authority. So I encourage you to continue looking for these nuggets and things that you can bring into your own leadership, which is what I hope each of you is starting to do, to think about what am I learning and what can I take back with me to remind myself when I'm trying to get something done, how I can do that even better. In the words of General Dempsey, let's make it matter today. All right? Are we ready for our first set of speakers? All right, let's do it. So I'm going to invite up Bonnie and Erica, our first 2 physicians. And this morning, with Bonnie and Erica, we are going to be talking about, I was going to say, I'll invite you 2 into these chairs. I'm going to take the one on the end. Okay. We're going to be talking about mentorship. Now, we've had mentorship panels up here in the past. Last year, we had one talking about selfless service. But today, we're really going to talk about the role of both being a mentor and being a mentee in influence, and how that can really be a reciprocal relationship in influence. All right, so now I'm gonna switch to my chair. Okay. We're gonna let Bonnie introduce herself and some of the work that she does in Nth Dimensions, and then we'll let Erica introduce herself, and then we're gonna have a conversation. So Bonnie, kick us off.
Great. Good morning, Dr. Taylor, thank you both for inviting me to be a part of this, very important leadership panel. It is just an absolute honor to be here and joining the ranks of such illustrious faculty under your name, Dr. Feagin, as well. The longer I do this work in mentoring, and in specifically the field of orthopedic surgery, I'm always amazed at the additional doors that I have the privilege to walk through, and I count this door as one of those today. So thank you very much. One of the things I'm most excited about, and Leah, when it comes to finding your passion, sometimes those passions are ignited in a way that's surprising and in a way that's unexpected. But what I've found is if we just stick to our path, and sometimes sticking to that path of excellence day by day leads you down a path that leads you to being able to influence others in a way that you had not imagined, and in a way that quite honestly wasn't planned. So as I talk about my role in Nth Dimensions as its founder and now its executive director, we're in our 14th year of leading young people into the field of orthopedic surgery, primarily women and underrepresented minorities who otherwise might not have even thought orthopedic surgery was an option for them. And that was primarily born out of my experience of wanting to be an orthopedic surgeon as a woman, as an African-American woman, some years ago, not having had any formal orthopedic surgery experience. So Nth Dimensions is actually a 501c3 nonprofit organization, again, that I founded. And what we really inculcate into our students is that we are excellence personified as leaders, scholars, and physicians in service to all communities as we work to increase health equity. These are the types of collaborations and the type of work that we've done across the country in conjunction with orthopedic surgeons, and now not just with the AAOS, but with the American College of Radiology, the American Academy of Dermatology, and we're moving into other specialties as well. I'll just be very, very brief just to show you a bit of my history. So this is kind of the face of orthopedics, right? Guys and me, right? Guys and me. And this is me as a chief resident in orthopedic surgery. I had the privilege of training under such great leaders such as Dr. Edward Anthony Rankin, past president of the AAOS, Dr. Richard Grant, the first African-American president of the ABOS. And these were my influencers, and these were the guys that invested in me and told me I could do it, because there just weren't that many African-American or that many women, period, around. I show this slide primarily to say that this is me as a chief resident. I had received the Robert Carroll Hand Fellowship at Columbia, and I was excited to go. I was really, really enthusiastic about hand surgery, and hence our link that we'll talk about a little bit later. But as a chief resident, I began to have some random migrating arthralgias, pain in my right shoulder, pain in my left hip, and within a very short period of time, I was diagnosed with a very aggressive case of rheumatoid arthritis. I was able to, although transition into practicing orthopedic surgery, I was so sick at the time, and we didn't have some of the disease-modifying anti-rheumatics that we have now. So I was having to take chemotherapeutic level drugs in order to try to calm my disease. Well, it didn't work. So I had to actually resign from my hand fellowship, which was devastating. And within 3 short years, I was no longer able to operate. And within 5 short years, I had to retire from orthopedic surgery, the clinical practice. But I knew that I had not traversed that path of pledging the fraternity of orthopedics before work duty hour restrictions for nothing. I knew there was a path. I knew there was a reason. It was completely cloudy. It was unclear to me what that path was, but it led me to being able to meet some of the most amazing mentors, some of the most amazing leaders that I now know I would not have met had I been an operative surgeon and had I been limited to my one community hospital in Washington, D.C. Actually, at this point, I've been able to influence and actually meet influencers nationally and internationally. So for that, I'm actually forever grateful. I understand now that and please understand that progress is a process, and it might not follow the plan that you set up, but it can always, always have a positive difference. So in Dimensions, at this point, 14 years in, we are the most successful pipeline program for women and minority students looking to matriculate into the field of orthopedic surgery. We know that diversification leads to excellence, and that is our goal. We've taken the approach to expanding the physician workforce from a multidisciplinary stakeholder approach. And what we do is that we galvanize the forces from industry, from academia, from the individual surgeons, and also from our patients to make sure that we're all interested in supporting these young people as they look to progress into orthopedic surgery. And I'm very, very proud to say that I have two of my intervention scholars here today. Future Dr. Eviana Baldwin, who's a Feagin Scholar in this year's class, and also future Dr. Niobra Kia, who are both intervention scholars exhibiting that excellence every day. This is not just a pipeline program where we are a one-touch program. We start working and influencing students from prior to their matriculation into medical school, but all the way through to the match. So this is not just a one-time exposure. This is a longitudinal developmental program where we work to encourage and improve some of the non-clinical skills that our students may or may not have been exposed to, again, to exude that excellence on an ongoing basis. We're proud to say that we've been a 6-year partner of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgery, and as I said, now in our 2nd year of partnership with the American College of Radiology. But these are my orthopedic surgery colleagues that have been helping us all along the way from any number of 50 U.S. institutions, and now we're partnering with individual chairs, Dr. Fu up at Pitt, Dr. Lieberman out at USC. I could go on and on to name the docs, but there are docs like Dr. Schaefer, who's here with us today, who's been a part of our program for the past 6 or 7 years at the very, very, very least, as a part of the Diversity Advisory Board at the Academy. So in my mind, not only do through some adversity are we able to kind of ignite our passion if we are persistent, but we're also able to build some collaborative bridges that lead to excellence. And that's what we've been able to do with the support of all of these docs and these programs. Of course, the Ruth Jackson Orthopedic Society, the Perry Initiative, and most certainly the J. Robert Gladden Orthopedic Society, the Multicultural Society of the AAOS. So over time, what type of impact have we had? To date, this number has increased just a little bit. We're close to about 5,000 students that we've been able to educate about orthopedic surgery being a career option for them, and this is on the undergraduate student level and the medical student level. From about 85 U.S. medical students, we've been able to pull our scholars through our longitudinal program. And over this period of time, so from start to finish, this is probably what, an 8 or 9 year process. So now we have over 50 residents in residency programs across the country, many of whom state they would not have been an orthopedic surgeon had it not been for Nth Dimensions. And more importantly, these are scholars. We want our scholars to be, comprehensively prepared, both clinically, professionally, and from a research perspective. So everyone does a research project that is presented at national meetings. They go on to have publications, and we're just extremely proud of the work that our young people have done. So these are just some of the residency programs where our students have matched. So needless to say, I'm a social person. And so in that examination room, I probably would not have gotten to meet so many of these chairs and program directors across the country. So it's like a total win. And so we are excited about all of the work that our young people are doing again. But again, this is collaborative excellence at its best. And then just to round out, the power of mentoring is just that. It's powerful. As a young I think I was a second-year medical student wanting to go into orthopedic surgery. And I'm not sure if you all know, there are still some medical schools who do not have departments of orthopedics for their students to gain exposure through. I went to a small, historically black medical school, Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, and it's only one of 3 remaining medical schools at this time. And I was told you will never be an orthopedic surgeon because, number one, you don't have any exposure to orthopedics. So I had to take it upon myself to find my orthopedic community and connections outside of the realms of my medical school. And I was fortunately introduced to Dr. Claudia Thomas, who was a professor of orthopedics at Johns Hopkins at the time. And she was also the first African-American woman to become board certified in orthopedic surgery in 1980. And here I am as a 4th-year student, us in the top right-hand corner there. And 20 years later, she was there as I received the Diversity Award from the AAOS for the work that we've done. So this mentoring matters. And on the continuum of investments that we can make in our young people, mentoring is one of the key things, key elements that I think is critical. Our program works through 3 phases. We have ongoing bioskills workshops across the country. And then our students also participate in our Intervention Summer Internship Program, which is an 8-week summer program that both Aviana and Niobra have participated in, where they shadow practicing orthopedic surgeons for 8 weeks clinically. They produce a research poster. They go on to present that research at a national meeting. They also receive Step 1 board prep scholarships to make sure that their Step 1 board scores make them competitive. So even entering into their 3rd year, they are now highly competitive applicants for orthopedic surgery and letting them know what that looks like. We get a chance to hobnob with our AAOS leadership. It's Dr. Williams, our past president from the Academy, so we get to have a little fun as well. And then also, too, we are able to engage the AAOS presidential line. Here we have Dr. Tesher along with Dr. Fu, the year he received his diversity award, so that the students understand that orthopedics is an accessible avenue for them to pursue, and that the leadership of the Academy has a vested interest in making sure that we are successful. So my shining glory, again, as I close, 89% of our students matched in orthopedic surgery this year. They're going to 16 different residency programs this year in the U.S. And we're just beaming with excitement because after the years of investment for 89% of our students to match in ortho, we couldn't be happier. And then I'll just close. I get this question all the time, where did this name Interventions come from? Basically, I just underscore with our students that we have an infinite number of dimensions to our lives. I'm from a family of nerds. My dad is a physicist, and so as I was building this nonprofit, I said, Dad, I want a name that has some mathematical but unlimiting potential in its name. And so we were talking about Einstein's theory of relativity, and he said, well, think about the dimensions that Einstein described. And I was like, and they're an infinite number. Hence, we have nth dimensions, so please know that you have an infinite number of dimensions to your life as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie, that was a great introduction to sort of who you are and what you do.
Yes.
And talk about the power of mentoring and what Nth Dimensions has done for all of those young people. It's
Absolutely.
phenomenal.
Thank
So now we're gonna bring it down to a personal relationship.
Yes.
So we can get a little bit of insight into how that can play out one-on-one, right? And not necessarily as part of something quite as big and amazing as Nth Dimensions. So Erica, can you maybe kick off by just sharing a little bit about yourself, how you got here and where here is?
30 seconds or less, okay. So hi, I've met, fortunately, the majority of people in this room. I'm Erica Taylor, part of Duke Orthopedics faculty, hand surgeon. I've been here for 5 years, but I was also here as a Duke medical student from 2002 to 2006. How did I get here? I ask myself that every day. How am I sitting on this stage right now? How is Dr. Feagin right across
Right
from me?
there.
How was I at that event last night? I'm not sure, but when I talked to my husband, who's gracious enough to be with me this morning, about, so I'll just ask, how many of you have seen the movie Black Panther? Anyone seen that? Okay. So there's this scene where Prince T'Challa is fighting and he's starting to lose, and his mother says, "Tell them who you are." Do you remember that part? And he says, "I am T'Challa, son of," he goes on and on and on. And I thought about that, and someone else mentioned it, and I decided that maybe I should tell people more often who I am and bring that individual nature, personal touch to everything that we do. So I'm the daughter of a teacher, Patricia Taylor. She taught for 31 years in Fairfax County Public School System. So education, it's in my DNA. And I'm the daughter of Charlie Taylor. He was an NFL Hall of Famer football player for the Washington Redskins, with that team as a player and coach for about 31 years. Rookie of the year, drafted first round as a running back, then switched to a receiver. He was tall, but he was fast. So winning is in my blood. Championships, those are in my DNA. And I'm also the granddaughter of Arzella Grant, who my youngest daughter, Lauren, has her middle name as her first name. She moved, as also a teacher, moved from the West Coast to the East Coast to help raise me as my parents went to work. And what that meant was, one, this is a long time ago, she did not know how to drive, so I always had someone in the house. I would come home from second grade, and I would do my second grade homework, then I would do my third grade homework, and then I could play video games or go outside. It was always that next grade was in the house, and I loved it. And so in third grade, I did fourth grade homework, and it continued on until I was in a position where everything was advanced, so I didn't need that extra leg up. But she embodies loyalty and sacrifice, so that's in my DNA. So when I think of education, championships, breaking records, loyalty, sacrifice over and over again, that's who I am. And I think if someone were to ask me, how did you get here? That's how I got here.
Very nice.
Didn't expect that. Thanks, Erica. That was fantastic.
Proud.
Right?
Proud.
Yeah, who's lucky? I'm the lucky one getting to sit up here with you two. So Bonnie, can you share a little bit about how you and Erica came to know one another?
From our first encounter, so this has always been Erica. So this is not just the evolved Erica, but I think she's the Erica that her parents and your grandparents would be proud of. This is why they invested the time and energy and the work that they did so you could be sitting here today. I mean, I'm sitting here, I couldn't be more proud of you. I was a board member of the Gladden Society. When we were in a board meeting, reading a letter from a young medical student who was looking to present her research overseas, and was essentially asking for some support from the Gladden Society. And this was one of the most astutely written, letters of excellence and requests that I had ever heard at the time, and I was a young attending. And shortly after the letter was read, we said, we have to find some way to make sure Erica Taylor can find her way overseas as a medical student to present her research. And we did just that. We met shortly thereafter, and it's just been a pleasure to build a mentor-mentee relationship with Erica along the way, because, I say that she's been this person the entire time because even as her mentor, I learned from her, even from the beginning.
Okay, we're certainly going to come back to that theme of sort of the reciprocal nature of mentor-mentee relationships. So Erica, writing a letter as a med student, tell us your side of that story.
So this was 2004, before email was really
There was no email.
Popping.
Not really.
Right? This is, I was sitting at the NIH, I was in the clinical research training program, and I had this project about the impacts of obesity from a musculoskeletal standpoint in the pediatric population. submitted it for this International Children's Bone Health Conference. It was accepted. It's in Sorrento, Italy. And then the NIH powers that be said, you're not a private investigator, principal investigator, so you have to fund yourself. So I had met Dr. Laura Tosi, an orthopedic surgeon at Children's Hospital in DC, who said, hey, have you ever heard of the Gladden Society? So I know some people, and they just got a grant, and they don't know what to do with it. And okay, so I made a couple letters. One was to Dear J. Robert Gladden Society, which Dr. Mason alluded to, and the second one was to Oprah. And wrote the letters, printed them out, put them in an envelope. This happens, you know, you put an envelope and a stamp and you send it in the mail. And Oprah did not reply, but the Gladden Society did. And one condition was, we will fund you, but you have to attend the AOS meeting this year. It's in Washington, D.C., so not too far from the NIH, and tell us what you did and tell us who you are. Yeah. And when we talked about at our small groups yesterday, name a time where you felt like you belonged, I mentioned one of my mentors, Dr. Lorenzen, and when I went into that AOS meeting, that luncheon, out of the sea of orthopedic surgeons, he saw me and took my hand and led me to the front, one of those reserved tables where he was sitting, and I got to sit with him and Dr. Epps and Dr. Grant and all of these great giants in orthopedics, and I felt like I belonged.
Yeah. That's amazing. So you had this opportunity to go overseas, and you had this person. What was her name again from the children's?
Dr. Tosi, Laura Tosi.
Dr. Tosi. Okay, so Dr. Tosi sort of walks up and says, "I've got a nugget. I've right." She kind of hands you a layup. Yeah. Here's something that not a lot of people know about that I think you could take advantage of. Right now, in my experience, when people do that, when they give you these paths, it's because they see something in you where they know you're going to take advantage of it, right? So how do you think about this notion of either taking advantage of layups or giving other people layups?
Yeah, so the biggest thing when I reflect on this that I want everyone to realize is that you don't know where these are going to come from. Mm-hmm. You couldn't look around the room today and say, that's going to be one, that's going to be one, that's going to be someone who's going to believe in me, let me migrate to them. It's by opening your mind about who these mentors or people who are going to pass you the ball, to use the analogy, are. And many of you have seen me present. I have some of my mentees. If I've mentored you in some way, raise your hand. I see you. You, boom, 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 perfect. So many of you have seen me present my blank page slide, where it starts with a blank page, and that was me, pre-Dr. Mason in about 2003. And then you start adding pictures of people who have touched you, who have given you nuggets, given you layups, helped you navigate on this path where along the way there are gatekeepers who sometimes are really intentional about stopping your path. But they give you the key and you can keep going. And as I discuss some of my stories, I put the pictures of Dr. Tosi, Frank McHugh, Dr. Mason, Dr. Lorenzen, all line up, and you can tell it's actually a very colorful page. Mm-hmm. It's actually male, female, black, white, other, everyone's represented. And the take home from that is you don't know what your blank page is going to fill up with. Everyone you meet, everyone who comes along the way, good, bad, or indifferent, take something from them, use that to fire you forward. So the layups come from everywhere. My cousin, Dean Taylor over there, one thing he doesn't know that I've never really mentioned to him is I met him when I was a young resident at the University of Virginia, and he was our visiting professor. At the time, I wanted to go into sports medicine, and he came, and those who were interested in sports got to go out to dinner with the VPs, and I went out to dinner. And when I shook his hand, he said, oh, we could be related. And for the rest of his time at UVA, he referred to me as his cousin or his sister, and he put his arm around me. In that moment, what he didn't know is I was really struggling with being different at UVA. And he gave me a sense of belonging. And for that reason, I want to be where he is. If he's here, I feel a sense of comfort because I've revered him and appreciated him from that moment. And we're talking about over 10 years ago. So you don't know where those layups are going to come from.
I love this image of taking a blank sheet of paper and filling it up
Yep.
with pictures of all different shapes and sizes and
Mhm.
colors and looks, et cetera. So, Bonnie, we heard about how you pulled Erica,
Mhm.
right, into your page as a mentee. How about your page of mentors? How did you fill out your page of mentors in a similar way to what we just heard from Erica?
Well, one of the things that I've had the um, I've taken a little bit of time to do, especially now that I have young children, is reflect similarly to the way Erica's reflected on, what has gotten her here to date. And my first mentor was my mom, who was a construction engineer in the 70s. So she took on, pledging a fraternity herself. So the concept of me doing the same thing, wanting to go into orthopedics, was like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And I thought the world of her for that, because I saw her go out with her construction hat and her boots. Well, she changed into them out of her heels, right? So I saw her be herself, but also be able to morph into this person who could be a leader in construction. So starting, really with who was at home and who invested in me and my dad, the physicist, again, from the academic perspective, really being open to exactly the way Erica was saying, to, who can be a support, but you have to be open and a willing recipient of that support and of those nuggets. And again, you don't know where those are coming from, but there are a lot of common mentors that we have in place too, including Dr. Tosi, Dr. Laura Tosi, and then also too, including Dr. Fred Azer from the Campbell Clinic. When he was the sitting president the year that I won the diversity award. But all along the way, there were either my coaches or my attendings, and many of whom did not look like me, but saw something in me. And at some point, I began to trust that they saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself. So if they were tightening the screws or encouraging me to do a little bit more, work harder, achieve that level of excellence, it was because they saw something in me and they were trying to guide me down that path. And it may have been uncomfortable. Your mentor's job is not necessarily to make you comfortable. It is to push you to your next level, and that we know that that level of growth does not come without some pain. But knowing that that pain will pay off is just one of the take-home points that I have, and what I've learned from many of my mentors who were firm, but they knew in order for me to be an orthopedic surgeon, I would need to be tough. I would need to be academically sound. I would need to be, morally resolute and have that mental fortitude. And those are the types of discussions my mentors would have with me as they push me forward. And then I have the benefit of passing on to Dr. Taylor here along the way. So,
Talk about influence, not necessarily with authority, right? So I would imagine most of your mentors, many of your mentors, weren't your bosses. They were other people who saw something and as you said, encouraged you to tighten the screws and to enhance your practice and your
absolutely.
skill. And as you said, now you've gotten to pass that down to Dr. Taylor. So
In many ways.
you also mentioned in one of your earlier comments that your relationship has evolved
Yes.
in terms of mentor mentee into something else. Can you talk about that evolution of mentoring relationships as your mentees progress in their careers?
Absolutely. So the traditional mentor-mentee relationship holds that, okay, I have something to share or give, and this person is the recipient. And then over time, as you watch your mentee evolve and develop, again, I've begun to, over time, really benefit from uh, her blossoms, her blooms, the things that make you the excellent surgeon that you are, now the excellent wife and mother that you are. It also gives me the opportunity to learn to let go. So I was the mentoring chair for the Gladden Society for 14 years. Um, Do you want to tell this part of the story?
We can
Okay.
both tell.
Well, so there are two sides to this story as well. So I was the mentoring chair of the Gladys Society for 14 years and had created some innovative programming there where we were able to, again, actually work with interventions and bring 40 to 50 medical students to the academy every year to become exposed to the field of orthopedic surgery. And after 14 years or so, I knew it was time for me to create a succession plan for myself and anyone in leadership, especially if you are an innovator and you've brought something, taken something from a sheet of paper, and now it's a full-grown program with tangible returns. It's hard to let that go. It's hard to transition and give that baton over to someone else. But it was my time to transition, and that was a self-imposed transition. But nonetheless, I thought about who not just was willing, but was capable of taking that baton. And I thought about Dr. Taylor here, and essentially I called you, and the timing wasn't perfect, but why don't you take it from there?
Yes. So remember I said that I went to that one AOS meeting as a third-year med student, and that was probably 2004. So I've been to every single AAOS meeting every year since. Either, if I was a resident, I made sure I had a poster to present, a podium presentation, a symposium. There was some reason, either I was on the diversity advisory board, I needed to be at that meeting, and perhaps it stems from why I went there that first time. It means something to me. There was one meeting, though, since 2004 I have missed. And that was around it was a late February meeting for some reason of 2013. So I missed it because I was actually in labor with my twins. And as I am in Duke Hospital, which is where I will have all of my children because it's great, I get this text message from Dr. Mason and then from some other people that says, you've just been officially nominated and approved to be the mentoring chair for the J. Robert Gladden Society.
Yes.
We have just announced the delivery of your children at the luncheon. And there was no question mark. It was, this is what you are. And my husband was there, kind of laughed. I said, I'm not even there. How is this even occurring? But I was very happy, push, happy. And I said, okay, yes, great. And then, luckily she did give me a little time before I dove into what does that mean, what do I do, and how do I transition with her. But that was the timing of it. But despite the timing, if you trust your mentor and you have grown with them, you trust their path that they have laid out for you.
I love that story. Mm-hmm. And it's a great segue into some questions that I now want to ask you all. So I want to take maybe 10 minutes for you at your tables to have a bit of a conversation on two questions. The first relates to this notion of how your mentors have helped you perhaps influence where you didn't recognize that you had authority, right? So here's Bonnie helping Erica step into this role of being the mentoring chair, perhaps where she didn't know she was ready, she was capable, she was present. Right? So how have your mentors helped you do more than you thought you could do? That's question number one. And the second question relates back to this notion of filling up your page, right? So whenever we talk about mentoring, we always get a question about, I get that this is important, but how do I get me some? Right? How do I do that? And if there isn't an exercise in influence without authority that is cultivating a network of mentors, I don't know what it is. So I would love for you at your tables to talk about how have you cultivated a mentor or a set of mentors? How have you been open to taking advantage when people give you those nuggets, give you those layups to begin filling your page so that we can learn from one another about how we get us some of that. All right, so take about 10 minutes at your tables to answer those two questions, and Then we'll hear some answers and ask Erica and Bonnie some more questions.
Okay.
All right, who has a story that they'd like to tell about how a mentor helped you influence others when you didn't know you had it in you, helped you do something more differently, bigger than you thought you were before a mentor said, "Here you go." All right, Eric, thanks, Risa.
So I'm not going to speak for myself. I'm, I'm Eric Scoot. I'm going to speak in a sense for the table because one of the concerns, to go back to your point, Leah, which I think was terrific, how do I get some of that? Yeah. So a good friend of ours, and Dean, you may know him, Tom Kolditz at West Point. Tom was, he used to run the Behavioral Science and Leadership program at West Point, now down at Rice, running a really big leadership development program at Rice University. And Tom was perplexed in the military setting about this notion of mentors and mentees. We in the military have this expectation we're supposed to be mentors. And so you put the sign on the door, "I am a mentor, come to me." Or you're looking, and what you find is, how do you know the right person? And there's a kind of almost guilt in, I don't have this list of mentees. So Tom studied this in a social science way, and what he found was, to make a long story short, mentees find mentors. Mentors don't find mentees. Mentees are in the clutches of a difficult time in their life, or a transition, or a crisis of confidence or conscience or something, and they seek out somebody who's, what did you say, Trump or John? Trusted and accessible. So the mentor has to be accessible and has to be trusted. And then the dynamic flips, Tom found, that once the established relationship, then the mentor reaches out periodically to the mentee, but it has to start from the mentee. And I think one of the challenges that many of us have, because I was going to get to ask later of you, these communities that many of us are working with now, West Virginia, we're working with Appalachia and Virginia, they have no tradition of mentorship. They have no royalty in their background. I mean, my great-great-grandfather probably changed our name because he was a horse thief, I think. So, I'm not gonna tout all of the great background, and certainly these downtrodden communities where there is no sense of isolation. So how do we inspire potential mentees to seek out mentors?
I think that's a great question. I don't know, Bonnie, if you have experience just in nth dimensions about how we create a path for mentees who may not have had the experiences that you two had growing up in seeking out mentors.
No, I think we have to be very intentional about positioning ourselves in places where mentorship is not the part of the culture, and making ourselves, like you said, accessible to these young people by gestures such as Dean Taylor putting his arm around um, uh, Erica here, and also maybe even providing that access. You can call me, you can email me, or here's the best time, but also outfitting these young people with strategic, actionable steps that they can use to build a mentorship relationship, such as, we let our students know you're not going to go to one meeting or conference without having some objectives, one of which includes walking away with the business cards of 3 people you didn't know before you got there. So that's one of your objectives, to intentionally put yourself in a position to introduce yourselves to 3 people, because you're right, everyone might not be a good fit, but if you're meeting 3 people, the odds that one of them might work out as a long-term mentor for you potentially increases. But if you don't know that walking into the door, if you're just coming in to listen and to attend, and don't know that you should have a meeting agenda for yourself. Understand one new concept that you didn't know before, so that you can reference that concept in the conversation with that potential mentor in the future. Actually providing some of the professional development skills that I think some of us take for granted that we have. Actually even working with your mentee and possibly even coaching them. So I love the concept that the Feagin Leadership Program uses around coaching, because it's not just a one-time conversation. There is some ongoing nurturing, developing that needs to take place from a non-judgmental perspective. And also not from the perspective that this poor little mentee needs what I have. It's also, let me hear your story and what I can learn from your background or your resilience. Because in those resilience stories is where I find a lot of strength from my mentees. And you know, not to mention they can teach us all kinds of new things about technology and a new app here or app there that makes my life easier. So when we empower them to tell their stories and so we learn from them as well, I think that's a great way to actually open that door with mentees, especially those who don't think or know that this could be a possibility.
It connects back to what we heard yesterday around creating that sense of belonging, right? By asking them their stories, you're giving it importance, right? Even in these places like Eric was talking about, where that might not be part of who they are, they might not think about their experiences and their resilience as having value. But there's also something else that I want to take from what you said, which is encouraging your mentees or the people with whom you're interacting to do one small thing. So it's not go to the conference and find your next mentor. It's have a conversation with somebody, right? It's what you all did at your party last night. It's go meet somebody who you haven't met before and walk away with having learned something new in general. And that planting those seeds are the things that are ultimately going to lead to these relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Those are two good nuggets. All right.
Well,
Here.
remember when yesterday John was cited for come home for dinner with me and my family. And you've done that for years.
Yep, it's those invitations, right? It's not just including people into things, but inviting them into those things that creates that sense of belonging and opens it up for people to take advantage. What? Oh, yes, please, in the back. Try the other one. All right, thank you.
Testing, that one's working. Larry Burke again. I have a story for the orthopedic surgeons who might find this amusing. When I was a medical student in Pittsburgh, I worked in Albert Ferguson's research lab, who's like the legendary orthopedic chairman who trained all the other chairmen. And one of my assignments was to go get synovial samples from the OR. So I went down to his operating room, first time, get the synovial, he's handing me the synovial sample in the middle of the procedure. I reached out, grabbed the tube, and I grabbed his glove. And so I contaminated the orthopedic chairman in the middle of the case. As a medical student, that's not what you want to do. And he just graciously smiled and asked for another glove and gave me the sample on my way. A couple years later, then as a radiology resident, the most terrifying thing was Albert Ferguson had radiology rounds once a week where he got all the x-ray films his residents would bring, and everyone would have to stand up and take a case and discuss it in front of the whole group. And all the orthopedic surgeons were required to attend, but only radiologists who had the guts enough to go and do it and stand up in front of all the orthopods and look silly would go. And I went every year, faced my fear, and I think that's one of the things that a mentor will help you do is get over your fear. So by the time I also had no orthopedic radiologist at Pitt at the time as a mentor. So like Ferg was my mentor, and by the time I finished my residency, I stepped right into an attending role and was able to mentor other people, and so I'm really grateful for that. And I believe that his father was a radiologist. Yeah, someone might correct me on that, but I think it was. So that got passed along to all the future radiologists who I mentored from Dr. Ferguson. So
What did he do to help you face that fear?
I mean, he just offered an opportunity to get up and take it on. And it was a choice. I didn't have to go to those meetings. The orthopedic surgeons had to go. The radiology residents were an option. And so it was an option that was there for me, and I went for it.
But he talked to you about it. So he created that space for you to step into.
Yeah, and it was terrifying, no question. So.
Right? I think a lot of these opportunities scare the patooties out of us. Raisa, there's John over in the corner.
So our table, one of the themes of what we were talking about was the concept. Okay, and now I'll be a little quieter. Was the concept that of getting a lot of, from the mentee point of view, getting a lot of responsibility a little too early. I mean, really gaining responsibility and being responsible for something really important. Cynthia brought up a story of how Dr. Curl implored her to do an extremely important job before she thought she was ready, and of course she excelled at it. Steve brought up a similar story, and it reminded me of a man that I worked under, mentioned by Dr. Feagin earlier, General Andrew J. Goodpaster, whose one of his sayings was, the key to success is to eagerly seek and accept responsibility. So wanting to get an early grasp on some big project that's an important part of it. So you back up one step on the mentee side. The next key was to ask questions. We were all sitting around, how did we encounter our first mentors? Well, it was because we asked questions of them. And then you back up one additional step. Well, why did you ask the question? Well, you had a vision of something in the future that you didn't currently have, and you were going to change the future in some way. And with that vision, it sparked a question. The question sparked a new responsibility. And then the next thing you know, you're in a lifelong relationship with a mentor.
I think that's a great story, and it connects back to so many of the things that we heard yesterday as well, right? That just having a vision for something. I mean, maybe it is a vision for the future that's going to lead to big change. Maybe it's just something small, like, I have to get funded. There's this thing I want to do, and I've hit a roadblock. And then what do you have to do? You have to ask for help, right? And it's having the courage to step into asking that first question. And you never know the path it's going to lead you down, right? Maybe that first question leads you to somebody like Bonnie, or maybe it takes 2 or 3 steps, but ultimately you get to those people. I think that's a great link. What else? What other good stories of mentorship leading to influence? Here you go.
Hello. So one thing that I told a story and Stephanie and I kind of agreed upon was, as a mentee failing or not getting the position that your mentor has encouraged you to do, and kind of feeling as if you haven't met the mark. So I'm interested in curriculum development, and so I applied to the LCME curriculum development committee student position, and I was excited. We worked on my application. I was there and I didn't get the position. And so I thought, okay, well, this is the end of my dream and my goal of curriculum development, and probably my mentorship relationship, because I'm clearly not worthy, or he can't develop me further. And then, the next week I get an email saying, oh, well, actually, we're currently reviewing our curriculum here at Rochester. How about you come to this meeting and discuss this course? Okay. And then I get another email. Well, next month, we're actually, let's look at the follow-up. We're revising this too. You should come to this meeting as well. And I met more people that were on Rochester's curriculum and making that network. And so I think that's a story of, I think one, your mentor, they're there to encourage you, and they're not going to give up on you just because you didn't get a position. I'm sure everyone in this room has been rejected once or twice or a few times. I'll speak for myself and say yes. It's what happens next, and not giving up on yourself, and yet again trusting, believing, and saying, okay, I'll take these opportunities. So I thought that was another twist to mentorship.
Well, I think that's important, just sharing your story as mentors about how we weren't always successful. I mean, I showed the picture of Dr. Claudia Thomas, who went into kidney failure as a chief resident at Yale. And she subsequently had to have a renal transplant. So when I was diagnosed with my RA as a chief resident, I knew that was not an end point for her. and I didn't need a transplant. I just lost the use of one of my arms. Okay, well, I have another arm and a brain, so let's put those to use and figure out what we're going to do next. So I think sharing those stories from a mentorship perspective, from a mentor's position of being vulnerable with our mentees, that they can then connect with us then on a humane level, to say that you can traverse what life will bring your way. And as Dr. Rankin always says, life has a paddle for everybody's behind. And so when that happens, know that you have the resilience and the tools, and it's my job to help refine her tools, right? It's my job to be the alchemist of her excellence.
Oh, and I'll just say one more thing, Aviana. When I mentioned Dr. Lorenzen as one of my lifelong mentors, he would always tell us when he was chairman at our program, if you've never failed at something, you're not trying hard enough. You're not aiming high enough. If everything you shoot for, you get and you get and you get, you're staying in your comfort zone. Yes. So there are things that, don't go the way I imagine they would, or things that, we apply for, we don't get. That's how I know, okay, I'm where I should be. I'm aiming for things that are different for me, and it's challenging me to be better.
I think that's a fantastic message to close on. I was going to give you two the final word, and I think you just took it. So thank you. Please join me in thanking Bonnie and Erica. Thank you so much.
And thank you.
All right, so now we get to hear an oh, wait, we have to say thank you. Come on up, come on up. I forget this every time. Come back, come back.
We love goodies.
Sorry, guys, I hate to take the microphone twice. I just wanted to definitely say a word in that I am, as a Feagin Scholar, before I was a Feagin Scholar, I was an orthopedic summer internship, hoping and praying to get into interventions because I knew Dr. Mason would change my life. And I am so happy to be a branch on your tree, which extends to your tree, which is now my tree, which is going to extend to some other awesome orthopedic surgeon's tree, and now extends to Dr. Feagin and the Duke community. And so thank you so much for your time, your mentorship, and I hope everyone got a lot as much as I had from that always.
I want to thank all of you. Get in there. You're in there too. I mean, for me, this speaks so much to the value that these connections can have in our lives. I mean, hearing the emotion in everyone's voices as we're telling bits and pieces of these stories about how people have touched our lives, this is what matters. This is what makes us who we are. So, I mean, again, the influence that we can have in one another just from reaching out and making that invitation, right? So, all right. So now, thank you, Dean, for reminding me of that piece. We get to hear from our next team of scholars. So, what loose instruction invitation did this team get? Interestingly, our next team is going to talk about the Duke Health Leadership Summit. So this is a meeting or an event that Feagin Scholars teams have been doing for the past few years, right? Which means perhaps one could imagine that it has a little bit more boundary around it in terms of what this team was asked to do. Essentially, the instruction is gather up everybody who's doing anything with respect to leadership in healthcare around the university and give them, something interesting to want to be a part of. Easy, right? Oh, and by the way, other groups have done it before you, so don't mess up. Do it even better, right? Yeah, little extra added pressure. Maybe just a little bit. Well, let's hear from our Scholar Leadership Summit team.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I just want to take a quick moment to thank the Taylors again for a beautiful evening last evening. That was really so nice of them to host us, and just a quick round of applause. I don't think they got all the thanks and appreciation that they deserve. So. All right, so we'll introduce the whole team in just a moment here. I'm AJ Blood. I'm one of the Feagin Scholars. I'm one of the few non-surgical residents here. So just wanted to talk a little bit about, it's interesting, always interesting to talk about a summit that we previously gave at this great meeting that we're having now. So we were tasked with coming up with a great discussion, a great meeting place, and how do we bring people together to encourage and foster a lot of the themes and ideas that we've been working on here through the Feagin Scholarship Program. So we came up with innovative collaboration and how do we build effective teams. And I just want to talk a little bit about how we got there, and this will give a little bit of the overview of the talk that we'll have this morning. So we'll go through a quick introduction of the team. We'll talk a bit about the project, some highlights from the summit itself. We'll get some of the review some of the feedback we got regarding the summit, and then talk about some of the challenges and lessons learned that we had from the summit this year, and then have some acknowledgments. All right, so here's our team. You can see us all standing here. We've got Arthi, moving on to Kyle. After Kyle, we've got Megan. After Megan, we've got Queeming. And after Queeming, we've got Selena. And our coach, unfortunately, David Bond, is not able to be with us here today, but we want to acknowledge him as well as a huge and integral part of our team. Okay, so this is a little bit of a timeline of where this all started. So we got the opportunity to meet each other all through the Feagin program. I don't think any of us really knew each other well prior to the Feagin Scholarship. So I think that just highlights one of the really important things that Feagin has done for us is bring us together and really get an opportunity to meet people from different aspects of Duke and at different stages of their career in different fields and disciplines. And we see a little bit of a timeline. We got a chance to meet each other for the first time in September. We got our project assignments then. We got to sit down for the first time in October, and really kind of the rubber hit the road in December at our big group meeting in Vail, Colorado, where we really started to form the idea around how are we going to bring people together around a concept that's engaging, that people are going to want to participate in and take something away from. And our really big focus was, we don't want to just talk here. We don't want this just to be a conversation. We want people to walk away with tangible skills and opportunities to really further their career, further their mentoring relationships, and further not just an experience, but projects and tangible products that would come out of this meeting. And that was really a focus for us. So that's really crystallized in the end of December and January, leading up to the summit, which is occurred about 2 months ago in this very space. And we'll talk a little bit about exactly what happened and how everything went. It was awesome. And that leads us here to today at the forum. And what you don't see along this timeline is the many touch points that we've had with Dr. Taylor, the many encouraging, gently, and then a little bit prodding emails from Joe Doty and some of our staff, and we're just really making sure that we're staying on task. We're getting the things done that we wanted to accomplish as part of this mission for us. So this is really where we started. We sat down in one of the classrooms at Duke and subsequently over at the University Club, and we just pulled out the whiteboard and said, what's important to us? What would we want to take away from a meeting like this? And really just giving everybody an opportunity to throw ideas out there, to say, what are we going to want to walk away from a meeting like this with? What are we going to want to accomplish with bringing these people together? And I think the crystallization of the leadership opportunities that we have here within Feagin are fantastic. And I think the training and the coaching is really so crucial to moving our careers and our skills forward. But how do we take that and not just amongst ourselves show all the things that we've learned, but how do we take this out to our larger and greater healthcare community? How do we take these skills, these opportunities that we've been given, and really bring this to our patients? And I think what we found was, while these skills are incredibly important in the operating room, on the floors, in clinic, to taking care of patients and to improving healthcare, not only on the individual level, but on a larger scale, as you zoom out to the 10,000, 50,000 foot view, how do we really scale this, and how do we really make this something that we can go beyond our immediate reach in one room or in one small group. And that really, we came to the idea that building a team, having a group of people, and putting the right people around you to have a meaningful impact on a scale that we really want to reach, and we want Feagin to reach, was what we wanted to accomplish as part of this meeting. So I'm going to hand this over to my colleague to talk a little bit more about the summit.
So we had this vision. And from this vision, we wanted to create 2 specific objectives as we were trying to create our summit. 2 objectives that would guide us and help us ensure that we were always going in the direction we wanted to go. The first, we wanted to showcase and highlight innovative projects that are already in motion at Duke. The second, as AJ mentioned, we wanted our audience, we wanted our attendees to come away with something. So in our summit, we wanted to give them the opportunity to talk to each other, to collaborate, to discuss the ideas that were already mentioned. So when they're going off and trying to create and solve their own healthcare problems, they know who to talk to. They know who to reach out to because they had this opportunity. So we had a vision. We created our goals. How did we get from that to reality? We had a lot of help. So thankfully, we all come from a lot of different backgrounds, so we had the guidance of a number of mentors and coaches who helped us reach out and recruit experts and leaders from so many different disciplines. The afternoon started with Marion Broom. She's the Dean of the School of Nursing and also the Associate Vice President of Duke University Health Systems. She started the afternoon by explaining her definition of an effective team. She said an effective team, the most effective teams, aren't the ones that focus always on work, but rather the ones that exude warmth and compassion. These are the ones who can solve problems seamlessly. And they're able to do this because they're full of leaders who don't feel like they always need to be in charge. They're the ones who can step up and step down. They're the ones who are open to communication, open to input and getting feedback. She was then followed by Tom Owens, who also shared his views on effective leadership and effective teams. First, they have their true north. In this environment of competing priorities, a team has to know what direction. They have to have their vision and they have to have their set goals. Second, they bring everyone to the table. Everyone has a voice, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from. You get a chance to listen because if you're not listening, you never know what's out there. And third, and most importantly, for an effective healthcare team, the patient is at the center. After the conclusion of the welcome and keynote, we had our primer and breakout sessions. So we brought in expert leaders from the community to talk about projects that are ongoing. We first had Blake Cameron, who's internal medicine and nephrology. Second, we had Gary Maslow, who's a pediatrician and psychiatrist. He was joined by Nicole Hebron, who's a psychologist. Last but not least, we had Dr. Morven Ross from Duke Physical Therapy.
So the task initially was very humbling for a group of 3 medical students and 3 graduate medical trainees to put together a leadership summit at an institution where there are leaders everywhere, Nobel Prize winners. How are people going to listen to 6 individuals that really don't have the expertise on leadership yet that they may have? And we're fortunate, again, to be at an institution that has a lot of great examples. So our goal was to use these examples and help people network and help people see how to be collaborative, how to get out of your silo and work with other groups and do so in an effective way. So there's 3 examples that we use, and I'll go over briefly here. The first was the Duke Nephrology e-consultations. So what this service did is it recognized that medicine's becoming increasingly subspecialized. There are advantages to that. As patients and providers, we get expert care as a patient. We can be experts in a very small field as a provider, but there are also disadvantages. We've all experienced long wait times, again, as both patients and providers, inefficient referrals, patients that come to clinic that maybe aren't in the right setting and they've waited a long time and they're not getting the answers that they want. Those are all the disadvantages of becoming increasingly subspecialized. And there are a lot of times when some of these answers could be attained with simply what we call a curbside consult. So you pass by a colleague in the hospital cafeteria or in the hallway and say, hey, I have a patient with this problem, what would you do? Unfortunately, with the computer these days, we click a button, and instead of having that conversation, we simply click the button and say, well, they'll get there eventually. And they can kind of get lost in limbo. And again, I think we've all experienced this. So what the e-consultation does, it actually uses the computer to our advantage. You can get a referral, you can look at lab numbers, you can look at x-rays and so forth, and figure out, would this individual or would this patient be best served by coming to see me in clinic, or can I simply give their primary care provider some information to take care of them more quickly and efficiently? And I think Dr. Cameron, who led this group, really had a great phrase, and it's the right care at the right time in the right setting. So this was one of our first examples of a collaborative effort here at Duke. Another example was with the Duke Integrated Pediatric Mental Health Initiative. And I thought this was really interesting. And if you look at the list of collaborators here on the side of the screen, it really is impressive. It's the hospital, the ER, Durham Public Schools, the Sheriff's Department. Usually when we're getting involved with the Sheriff's Department, it's not a good day at the office. But a very collaborative effort, and I think that's highlighted here. And it also looked at an issue that there's a lot of stigma surrounding mental health in the United States, and particularly for children, I think it's difficult. And there's an increase in demand for these services, and the ER really was becoming inundated with these patients. The patients had long wait times. Over a third of the patients were in the ER for over 23 hours. If they had to go to another facility, they were actually handcuffed and transported to another facility by the sheriff, even though they hadn't done anything wrong. So for as a child, very traumatic. And there was poor outpatient continuity. So they identified a problem and again collaborated to make a change. And here's their model. So what they ended up doing is identifying these patients in the ER and then following through, getting them to the correct outpatient services. And they even took it a step further to help identify pediatric patients that may be at risk and may need help in the future. So that's a really great example of collaborative efforts here at Duke. And lastly, one that I'm probably most familiar with as an orthopedic fellow is the Duke Joint Health Program. And again, this is a multidisciplinary effort involving physical therapy, primary care, orthopedics, nutrition. These are patients that have arthritis and they have a lot of options. Oftentimes they don't know what all of their options are. Do I need an injection? Do I need surgery? These are all questions that are asked, and it's difficult. You go to a surgeon because you want surgery, or do you go to your primary care provider and get an injection? So what this model did was it created a primary osteoarthritis provider, which are specially trained physical therapists to essentially guide the patient on this pathway. And as a patient, it can be very confusing on this pathway. So again, getting the right care at the right time in the right setting. So we took all of these examples and then broke up into small groups and discussed with these groups what were some of the things that were challenges for you. Again, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so we wanted to ask the experts here, how did you overcome these things? So we broke into small groups, and then we had a panel at the end of the day that really kind of took the information from the small groups and assimilated that and left us with some takeaways. And it was really interesting. Kevin Shaw was one of the panelists, and in his bio, he talks about value-based healthcare, and that's kind of a term that we all hear a lot. And in talking to him, I think the closing message was value-based healthcare is great, but it's really doing the right thing for the patient, which I think fits very, very well with the Feagin model and patient-centeredness. So I think that was the biggest takeaway from our summit that day.
So you've heard a little bit about how we had this really wonderful grand vision, and we had lots of experts that are ready to come in and speak about it. How do we break down silos? How do we talk amongst ourselves to really put the patient at the center of the care? So we needed to get people to come. So I was in charge of kind of the logistics and advertising, as well as the registration of all our attendees. And this is the part where we had to reach out to both our respective departments and divisions, as well as our mentors, and then other Feagin scholars to say, hey, can you get the word out for us? Luckily, there are a lot of avenues here at Duke that allow us to advertise and to advertise for free, which we really appreciated. And so we created a website for registration. It was through Eventbrite, which is an online platform, which is free. And it was able for us to send emails to all people who registered to give them updates, as well as to track registration so that we knew, just logistics of how much coffee do we need to bring, how much food, and then making sure we had all the summit materials for them. We were also able to advertise on the Duke University. If you walk out throughout the hospital, you'll see TVs, and so on the side here is one of the, it's basically a PowerPoint slide that would cycle every minute or so that everybody who's walking around the hospital can see this, because our goal, as we had mentioned, was to really get a multidisciplinary audience. We didn't want it, I think our biggest fear was that we were going to show up and it was going to be all physicians, and that was not what we wanted. We wanted to make sure that everybody who ever comes in contact with a patient here at Duke was involved. And so just a few quick facts about the participants at the summit. We had about 192 people register. It was a Tuesday afternoon with people who have clinic, and so unfortunately our actual attendance fell, but we were still very excited to have about 120 people show up, and we did have some same-day registration as well. We had 11 faculty speakers, and then here you can see there's a graphic that kind of breaks down where the people, kind of their respective schools of the attendees. And then the graphic on the right-hand side here is just something that we were able to pull from Eventbrite for analytics, so we could see kind of how our registration was going, and if it was starting to lag off, we could say, hey, now's a great time for another email or getting the word out. Chimeng made this wonderful graphic, which shows that these are the people who came. So we were really successful in getting this multidisciplinary, collaborative audience that we wanted. And the size of the word is reflective of the number of attendees. And so we were very, very excited to see that nurse was our biggest group of people who attended. But you can see there was a really well-representative multidisciplinary group that came to the summit.
So after summit, so we went ahead and sent out questionnaire and surveys to kind of elicit some of the feedbacks from the participant, and then we were able to. So overall, everyone seems to be pretty happy with the afternoon, with the content, with the the way they're engaged, including both the talks and as well as the small group sessions. And I think one of the couple of things that we're interested in people to take away from this is that. We want them to have a clear takeaway message so that they find that all the contents are relevant, and then they're able to bring something back to their daily work. And that's something we found out here. And number 3, most people are pretty satisfied. And another goal, as Artie mentioned earlier, is that we want to kind of facilitate this interdisciplinary collaboration. And really, the point of this the summit was to bring people from bring physicians, nurses, all the allied health together, and then we're able to achieve that. Here, number 4 has highlighted. Most people feel that they have the opportunity to meet and learn from individuals across disciplines with similar interests. And this is just a breakdown of by speakers and individual sessions, and overall, I think we did pretty well, and all the attendees are pretty happy and satisfied with the content and the way they're engaged here.
As you can imagine, putting on a summit like this can be full of challenges, both large and small, and we certainly had our fair share of them. I'll just cover a couple here that we found particularly pertinent to our case. So involving physicians is the first topic that I'm going to talk about. Despite the fact that we knew we had sort of a winning topic because we generated so much enthusiasm from stakeholders across the healthcare sector, getting physicians to commit to either a speaker role or a participant role was actually quite difficult. Some had very busy clinical schedules that precluded them from coming to the event, and others had career changes that took them away from Duke entirely. The second challenge that I wanted to talk about was preparing for the unexpected. And here I want to share a funny story with you, which is only funny in hindsight. On the morning of the summit, we were all here, the team was here, along with folks from the Feagin Leadership Program, trying to get everything ready. It's all about the details matter. And we had the task of splitting this great hall into 3 separate sections for our 3 breakout sessions. And it takes a bit of work to set up, as you can imagine. The podium needs to face a certain way, the chairs need to face a certain way. And on that morning, we actually changed the entire setup of the room a total of 3 times. It made for a bit of a stressful morning, but we got through it. And what we realized was that really communication underlied all of our challenges, and communication also led to the solution to all of our challenges. So for example, in the case of involving physicians, we relied on each other as well as our panel of speakers to really generate something that was engaging for all the attendees. And of course, in the case of switching the room setup, we relied on other Feagin scholars, other Feagin leaders, and people in the community to really help us complete that task. So what did we learn? When we started on this journey, when we began, we had the Duke Healthcare Leadership Model in mind with a laser beam focus on the patient at the center. How can we improve care for patients? How can we take better care of them? When we sat down to reflect upon our experience at the end of the year, we're relying on Lovegrove and colleagues who wrote about this idea of leadership across sectors in the Harvard Business Review. And I'll just mention a couple here. Balanced motivation is the idea that we're here together, motivated by this concept of doing public good, no matter where we are. We wanted to have skills that were transferable across sectors. That includes strategic planning, logistics, some of which my colleagues have covered. We wanted to have contextual intelligence that involved a really deep understanding of differences within and across sectors, whether that's finance, whether that's business, whether that's the provision of care. We wanted to have an integrated network and bring together an integrated network of people and relationships so that we can make interdisciplinary collaboration happen here and elsewhere. We wanted to develop a prepared mind for unconventional paths to our end goals. And lastly, we wanted to build an intellectual thread where we become holistic subject matter experts. And so these are sort of the key competencies that we relied on during this process of building together a summit and building together speakers that had expertise in their particular areas and bring together people from different silos. So we'd like to acknowledge the leadership and support provided by, of course, Drs. Feagin, Taylor, and Doty. I don't know if I see Joe might be in the back somewhere. And of course, we want to thank Cindy and Stacy for coming to our rescue many, many times throughout this process. Our coach, Dave Bond, Dr. Shaheen, who is one of the scholars from, one of the leaders from last year. And of course, all of you for being here and sharing in this experience with us. We also want to say something about the cooking challenge as well. So while other teams were busy constructing truffles and canoes, our team was very busy winning the cooking challenge. Thank you. We're happy to take any questions.
Who has questions? All right.
I really want to thank you and philosophize, because the one thing that we all share, regardless of whether we're the youth in our prime or in our 8th decade, is the value of our time. And I certainly woke up this morning looking forward to the challenge of today and your all's teamwork, because I knew that our time would be well spent. And I want to specifically take this opportunity to thank the scholars for their energy and their all the qualities that they bring to us that we share. It's been a great experience, and I want to thank all of you. Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, Dr. Feagin. Great,
Well,
Keith.
yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to speak after Dr. Feagin, but here goes. I've done it before, so. So a couple of questions. If you reflect and look back of some of the problems and challenges that you had about provider or physician engagement, if you look back, how would you change that, or moving forward, what would you do differently to engage more physicians? And we only know what we ask, and we never know what questions to ask. So how would you, moving forward, how would you look at these unexpected problems or challenges that you had and change for future?
Sure. So to answer the first question, I think that physician engagement was actually one of the more disappointing aspects. We came into it, and we all are physicians or future physicians, and we wanted to not have too many physicians. That was our initial issue that we thought we would have. And actually that we kind of had the opposite issue. We had everyone but physicians, and we could rationalize, they're too busy, their clinical schedule is too full, they can't make it. And you could think of maybe simple solutions like having it at a different time. So instead of in the afternoon, you could have it after hours. Well, people get home and they may not come back. So those sorts of solutions aren't great. But I think what I took away from this is we really have to encourage each other as physicians to be leaders. So you have to allow people to be flexible with their time, allow them to be flexible with their schedule, and really encourage that instead of discourage it. I think people, if they're not in the office, they're not working. But oftentimes when you're pursuing these things, it's an unconventional pathway, and you have to help foster that and allow your colleagues to do that.
Yeah, let me follow up. In my world, this is probably a national problem.
Absolutely.
So I guess what I'm asking is, what is your root analysis so I can move forward and figure it out, right? It is hard to engage.
Yeah.
And the two conflicts that I've noticed, patient care, right? Family time. Those are the two barriers in my world that I cannot get through, and I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, and I agree, and I don't think I can sit up here and give you an answer that'll solve that issue specifically, but all I can offer is to encourage your colleagues on their unconventional pathway. I think that's the biggest thing.
Were there any bright spots? So for the physicians who you did get to engage, maybe what can we learn from those who were able to step away, those who did lean in? Anything that you noticed from that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the breakout sessions were really wonderful with the small groups, and we focused on the process of building teams. So we had 3 groups. One was on how do you start? How do you find the people? The second group was about how do you overcome roadblocks that come up? And then the third group was about sustainability. When I'm ready to move on, how does this project stay alive? And I was in the sustainability group, and you could just kind of see how people were connecting who had never met before. And one example was in this group, I had reached out to our family advisory council at Duke, and we had a member who had lost a child in the NICU who's now on the council, and he was there, and there was a group of people who were in a master's program, I think it was through the School of Nursing, and their new job, their project was to look about patient experience and parental experience in particular at Duke Children's. And so it was this wonderful mixing of the minds, and you could see like, wow, this collaboration is going to take off, and it was just this chance meeting and this summit that brought it together. So that was a nice highlight for us.
Yeah, please.
And I'll just take, maybe a lesson learned was one of our biggest struggles was actually putting this event on the calendar and really nailing down our key speakers and session participants. So once we had that nailed down, it was around December. So that gave us about 3 months of lead time. But what we found was clinical schedules were already booked up at that point. So a lot of our physician colleagues weren't able to take time off of rounds or clinic to make it over here. And I think our modes of communication, while the most ubiquitous and easy to use, are often the easiest to discard and ignore. The 100th email of the day about an event 3 months from now. Sorry, I've got the kids' sports game to go to or whatever. The priorities of the day kind of supersede.
Go ahead, Dean.
So,
final word.
Again, the emotion that I'm feeling right now is pride in this team's work, and they're changing patient care. They're changing what's happening to patients. I mean, Arthur just gave us the example of another collaboration that came out of this that is helping patients. And like the other teams, you guys are making a difference. And Keith, you asked, how do we change that? This is changing that. And this is the incubator and catalyst for so many other things that are going on for my vision, my dream, to use Luke Powery's word, that we are going to improve healthcare in this country by having better leadership through more effective ethical leadership education. And that's why we're here. And that's why we're here. And that's, I'm not here to be a fundraiser, but that's why that envelope is in there. And take out the envelope, and a couple people have asked me, what do I do with it? Well, give it to me or give it to Cindy or any of our folks here. But that's, I mean, I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so proud of all the teams. Thank you. Come on over here and get a picture with Dr. Feagin.
Congratulations, Summit team. All right, so while they are taking their picture, the rest of us will go on break. So my watch now says 9:50. Please be ready to go at 10:10. 20 minutes. 20 minutes. All right, so we have one final group of scholars to hear from this morning. So our last group took on the challenging task of engaging the Feagin Leadership alumni. So this is not the first time that this challenge has been taken on. It's, we just heard, it's hard to get physicians out of their day jobs and out of their family commitments and out of all of the things that they're focusing on to do some leadership stuff. And perhaps it's easier when you're in a program, right, that's scheduling things for you. And here we are with this group of people who's interested in this, or they wouldn't have signed up for the Feagin program in the first place. And yet, it's been a little challenging to figure out what's going to be important to these people, what's going to bring them back into the fold and keep them engaged with this as they move out into their careers. So that was the challenge that our final group of scholars took on. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all to share with us what you accomplished.
Good morning. My name is Brian Gilmore. I'm a general surgery resident. My teammates are Kyle Freischlag, a fourth-year med student who I've convinced to go into general surgery, Sunny Patel, an orthopedic surgery fellow, Rita Bumgardner, an orthopedic surgery resident, Stephanie Roses, a med student applying in neurology, and Aviana Baldwin, a med student applying in orthopedic surgery. We were tasked very broadly with engaging the Feagin alumni. And that was a very broad topic, but it led to the creation of something that we'll be telling you about, the Feagin Alumni Network, and specifically why it is that you will all now be fans for life. So, by way of introduction, leadership development is increasingly a focus of medical education at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. In fact, within the last 4 months, a paper was published performing a systematic review of all known GME leadership programs. All told, there were 52. Of these, several had features that we know and love from the Feagin program. Almost 70% were small group based, nearly 50% utilized mentors or coaches, nearly 50% incorporated some sort of team project, 40% were longitudinal in some fashion, and 13% incorporated different specialties. So if there are 52 other programs, it's a fair question as to what is it that makes the Feagin program special. I think there are several things. The first is that we deliberately draw from diverse specialties, not just within medicine, but with our colleagues in physical therapy. We incorporate different levels of training. We incorporate medical students, residents, and fellows. We are not confined to a single institution, and we are truly longitudinal. Our curriculum lasts a full year. But I think most importantly is that there's a sense of heritage with the Feagin program. We have, as of today, 129 alumni. As of tomorrow, there will be 153. And even more importantly than that, we have Dr. Feagin himself, who has been who has been not only an inspiration for us, but really the man who's made all this happen and to whom we owe a great debt. We truly have a national footprint. We have people all over the country. We also have international alumni in Spain, New Zealand, and Canada. So the questions that we set out to answer were, how is it that we can continue to facilitate the development of our alumni into leaders? And how can we maintain connections between alumni? Not just between alumni and alumni, but between alumni and current scholars, as well as alumni and FLP leadership. And this was a pretty daunting task. We were dealing with people in some of the busiest professions out there. And we were worried, are we going to be bothering these people? But one of the lessons that we learned was that people want to be part of a team. They want to be engaged. Part of that is that Feagin selects for that. We want a phenotype of individuals who want to exhibit positive change. And we found that in our team as well. Of the 6 of us, we represented 3 different levels of training and 4 different specialties. But we were able to flatten our hierarchy, buy in, and contribute not only to our end product, but to our development as professionals and as leaders.
And as we're part of that team, one of the things I learned early on, and I know we all talk about the cooking challenge, but I think it's a great early on metaphor for what it is to be part of a team. It's to take yourself out of an element. For me, it was cooking. And to leverage maybe the expertise of people who that is their element. We had a pastry chef on our team who was able to guide us, and we were able to use their expertise, her expertise. And I think that's extremely important, is a lesson that you shouldn't be afraid of asking for help. And that's what we did as we looked towards the alumni. So we held large and small group focus groups, and we received several themes from the local alumni. They wanted the ability to connect online. We're in an information age, and they wanted the ability to see what their friends are doing, or the people who have moved away, and to stay in connection with them. And they wanted a unifying structure past the fact that everyone was a scholar alumni. They wanted infrastructure there that can help support and give them resources to do things past the program year. They wanted us to increase our outreach outside of Duke. Events like this, we do really well. But as we saw, we're an international program now, and we want to reach out to those alumni who are doing excellent things outside of the Duke community. And they also wanted different levels of engagement. As we go forward in our careers, we'll have busy years, less busy years, months where we're able to take on more or less. And they wanted to be able to taper up and down their level of involvement. And we create this community of leaders. So let's leverage that to help create some sort of network. And to validate these themes that we got, we sent an email to all alumni. So thank you to the alumni in the audience who responded to my emails. And we involved the alumni in generating those questions. And our focused themes for the survey were what leadership and roles you've taken on since the Feagin, and what training you've received in leadership since the Feagin. Do people who leave the program continue to get training from their GME or from their programs? What were some of the most meaningful lessons and skills they took away? And what are ways they can continue and want to continue to be involved in the Feagin Leadership Program?
So that brings us to what did we actually find out? And we collected 41 responses. And instead of kind of boring you with the real nitty gritty, I'll just kind of hit the highlights of what we found. First, we kind of asked, when did you graduate from the program, just to kind of get a baseline. And as you can see on the graph here, that most respondents were actually from the last 2 graduating classes. And so that suggests to us that there's a lot of enthusiasm from the recent graduates, and also that we have a lot of room to improve upon our outreach to the classes that graduated before that. Next, as Brian alluded to, we have a unique leadership program in that we have scholars from all levels of training in their medical career, and this again was borne out by our survey data. The next thing we wanted to look at was what specific leadership skills did scholars really think that they improved on upon their time in the program. And as you can see, there was a wide variation on just what the survey respondents thought, but the 2 that really stand out are emotional intelligence and mentorship. Next, as Kyle mentioned, we wanted to see what type of leadership training they had received since leaving here. And interestingly enough, a few respondents had received some sort of individual or group coaching, some had a longitudinal curriculum, but the vast majority really had no formal leadership training. That said, a lot of the respondents did want some sort of education after they've left here. And so we asked what type of activities would be most useful. And there was a pretty even distribution between some in-person skills workshops, virtual learning events that could just be done online, or some sort of articles on leadership that the alumni can do on their own time. And then lastly, we asked what was the most important role of the Feagin Leadership Program going forward for them, and what is the most important role as an alum? And these were all kind of free text answers, and really what came up again and again was networking and mentorship were the 2 things that they really wanted, in addition to some sort of educational component. So that brings us to kind of the lessons learned from this initial stage of the project. And the first part was that it's important to really define the mission and the scope of your project early on. And secondly, to understand the resources that are available to you. And what I mean by both of those is that, as Brian and the other groups have mentioned before, is that we were just given a vague task of figure out something with alumni engagement and how to do that better. So in our initial brainstorming sessions, we said, you know what, let's just do a survey, see what alumni really want, and then we'll maybe come up with an event at the forum or an event at some point or some sort of online curriculum that they can do on their own. And as we started to get some of the survey results back, and then we had further communications with the Feagin leadership, we were encouraged to think a lot bigger, and that there were a lot of resources available to us. That included administrative assistance, financial backing, technological support, and that kind of led to the creation of the concept of the Feagin Alumni Network, in which it would be kind of a self-sustaining organization that would be in place after we left, and that would have its own executive board and board of directors. And so kind of how we did that, I'll let Rita explain a little more.
So as Sunny, Kyle, and Brian have mentioned, as a team, we'd been on a journey sort of to come to this idea of the Feagin Alumni Network. And it was a really exciting journey for us as a team. And so we had this great concept. Next, we had to take our concept and turn it into reality. We did that through 2 primary ways. One is the governing structure, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, and then Stephanie is going to talk more about our membership engagement. So after deciding to launch FAN, our team got together and did some really deep dive into what was our common purpose and shared vision for FAN. We thought about what that meant for our team and also what that meant for our alumni and what our alumni really wanted. And so from that work, this is the mission statement that we came up with. The 2 things I want to highlight here are the idea of connecting alumni to promote mentorship, which I think has been really a theme of today, and then also giving alumni the resources and opportunities to continue to learn as leaders. Next, we had to find some people to help us make FAN a reality, and we are so lucky to have an incredibly dynamic duo taking FAN into the future. We're very excited to announce Val Esposito as our inaugural president and Drake Edwards as our inaugural vice president, and you guys will get to hear from them shortly. And of course, Val and Drake will not be on their own as they continue this endeavor of FAN. We have put together an incredible board of directors to help support them and FAN as it evolves and grows. So what have I taken away from all of this? I'm so proud of the journey that we've taken as a team. As you can see from our DISC results, we really were people who came from diverse perspectives, and it really took a lot of, as our coach Jane would say, forming, norming, storming, and performing to kind of accomplish this goal. And I'm really proud of what we've done.
So we also couldn't leave Val and Drake and the board with just titles and a vague mission statement. We wanted to leave them with a structure from which they can work their magic over the next year and not spend their time just trying to figure out how to set up a website or how to let people know they are in this organization that they have magically found themselves in today. Congratulations. So one of our first steps, like General Dempsey said yesterday, nothing replaces face-to-face interaction, no matter how many websites we set up or talks that we give. And as a salute to the military foundation and heritage of the Feagin Leadership Program, we decided that one way that we can encourage in-person communication is with the program challenge coin. And we have these coins that have all been minted. Dr. Feagin, good. I owe him a drink now. So we decided that these challenge coins were a way to both have the Feagin Alumni Network sort of as a tangible thing you can hold, you can feel, it has heft. It is a heavy box to carry home from the mailbox. But on the back, we have the leadership model that the Feagin Leadership Program has developed over the last few years. And what's used now is the Duke Health Leadership Model with patient-centeredness in the middle. So if you have a difficult day, if you're meeting up with someone from Feagin, you have this hopefully in your pocket. And if you don't, you could be challenged by another Feagin leader or Dr. Feagin himself or Dr. Taylor. You could be challenged to produce your coin, and if you don't have it on you, you owe them a drink. Same's vice versa. If you have it, they owe you one, so I would always carry these around. Dr. Taylor has said he will find me one day without my coin, but I keep it in my phone wallet, and I challenge you to find a millennial without her phone on her at all times. So I'll get you. But we also know that not everyone is face-to-face. I probably won't see our people in Canada and Barcelona, and we have someone going to Nice, France next year. I may come to Nice, France, though. So through the Duke Alumni Association, we've set up the Feagin Alumni Network website with their support. I was expecting a meeting where I'd have to fight for their assistance and trying to get us involved, and they had total buy-in from the start. So with the security of the Duke Alumni Association, all Feagin leaders and a lot of our administrators will have access via their net IDs and passwords to the Alumni Network page. This can be for normal website things like events and announcements, but what I was excited to do is form a map where you can search a city, you can search a name, you can search a graduation year, and find someone and their contact information who you can talk to in person, by email, by telephone. And I'm not a famous person yet, so you guys can have my information and do with it what you will. But everyone else's information is protected by the Duke University now multi-factor authentication that takes a long time to get through. But you can find someone if you're doing a fellowship in Chicago, if you are doing interviews in San Francisco, if you're on vacation in New Zealand, you can find someone, connect with them, and then challenge them over a drink. And so we thought that was a great way to open the doors to mentorship and networking and make it a lot easier for people.
And so while we've talked a lot about how our Feagin alum and leaders are international in different places, our team had a unique challenge in that I am currently the only Feagin scholar that does not reside in Durham or currently attend Duke University in some form. And so as I am at University of Rochester, I'm essentially an international Feagin scholar, because we're basically in Toronto if you don't know where I am. And so we had the unique challenge of figuring out how to work remotely and maintain momentum. And so that had to begin with the creation of culture, which Brian alluded to with the flattened hierarchy. But how do you flatten the hierarchy? We can't just come in one day and say the hierarchy doesn't exist. It begins with evolving and maintaining and getting to know one another. So we probably spent the first few sessions where I was physically in Durham just getting to know one another. Let's take 30 minutes to an hour and not say it's a waste of time, but no, how was your day? And which Jane would love to call check-ins. And we made it a habit to continue those so we can understand where one another is coming from. And so we created our own culture within each other where I felt comfortable reaching out and saying, hey guys, what can I do since I am not physically here, since I can't do that face-to-face? And some of that was via email and text, and we tried out Slack, and for all those technologies, it still came down to face-to-face. And we learned you can still have face-to-face while working remotely with these wonderful technologies like Google Hangouts. So while we couldn't have, at a coffee shop, we could hang out, do the Google Hangouts, connect and learn, and all be contributing members, and also came from other members above the hierarchy leaning in and giving someone who was outside of the Duke culture opportunities to lead and feel safe within the space. And so those are all themes that we have been connecting on and continuing. And when that momentum as a group that was spread apart began to kind of flatline, as Rita said, the storming and understanding what we need to do, we were able to reconnect through those resources like Google Hangouts and figure out how can we best go about this. And so I think it's a great model for future Feagin scholars from other institutions, as well as leaders to figure out, as we now join the board, to figure out how are we going to be able to connect as we spread out throughout the world. And so in summary, just kind of looking at what we did, while all of you guys in the room are not Feagin alum, you can take lessons on how to build a network within maybe organizations that you are members of. So we were assigned a task, right? So your first question is, what is your question? What is your task? And so our task was to engage alumni. So, okay, simple, yet kind of hard. And we could have sat up and said, the 6 of us know what alumni need as current Feagin scholars, but that wouldn't have made any sense. So we had to assess, what do alumni need? What is the need in our community, right? So you can take this and say, I'm going to do a community project. Well, what does my community need? So that was our assessment. That was our survey. And then one thing that we really took away from the Johnson & Johnson talk from Jay and Derek was having a baseline. They call it a credo, we call it a mission. Our value, we talk about it a lot in our value statement. What is Feagin Alumni Network's values, and what is our mission, and what are we going to hold each other to? And that was the creation of the Feagin Alumni Network, which is, while our network can be translated to any process of creating an organization. And so with that, we really want to thank everyone on this slide, but in particular, unfortunately, our coach as well, Jane, could not be here. She was a force with us. She, as we talked before, she challenged us to think above ourselves. She encouraged us to get to know one another and come together. And she supported us and helped us grow as a team to the point where I am happy to know that I will always be with, Team Hot Sauce. This is not the end. And with that, I would like to, with the greatest enthusiasm and excitement, announce that on this day, May 19th, 2018, the Feagin Alumni Network, in honor of the Feagin Leadership Program and Dr. John Feagin, has officially launched. And so everyone, all alum and everyone can know that you will be a fan for life.
I noticed on the one slide that swag was very important. I agree. Nice shirts. Nice shirts. All right. So questions, comments for our fan team or Team Hot Sauce? I know that was a thing. I like that. Fans of hot sauce. All right.
I'm Kathy Coiner. I was a Feagin Scholar back in the second year the program ever existed. So this is a huge undertaking for you guys, and I really applaud you. You've done a wonderful job, and definitely super excited, and I'll be a fan for life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you got one. Other questions? What was the biggest challenge that you faced as you were pulling together what the right answer was? What the solution was that you wanted to try and chase?
I think the biggest challenge was early on we had a lot of small ideas, a lot of small solutions, and it really took Dr. Taylor's encouragement to really think big. And I think that was a point where we were afraid to think big, to think about creating this huge organization and what an undertaking it would be. And so the biggest challenge for us was to get outside our comfort zone and think about really creating something that would be big.
I like that. It's a theme that we've heard right across the 2 days is to have that vision, but also how asking for help, talking to those around us can help us think bigger, to have even more impact. Other questions or comments?
I'm Anne Marie Husk. I'm one of the co-directors of our Division I Physical Therapy Fellowship, which is Sierra is a part of. And so this is inspiring me to think about our PT fellows who have graduated. We have about 20 since like 1998 or so. So we send out things periodically to them and try to get them together at our annual meeting, but maybe only 4 or 5 are able to come. So this has inspired me to think about something like this for them so that they can contact each other, especially like if they have a question about a patient, have you seen this? Do you have any ideas or different projects they're working on? So I think that'll be really great. Thank you for sharing this.
Thank you.
That's our second piece of sort of real follow-on work that scholar presentations have spurred on during the conference. So thank you for that. So, yeah, Sierra gets double now. You get 2 networks to be a part of. Great. All right. Other questions or comments? All right. Join me in thanking our scholar team. If you all would move over here to take a picture with John Feagin.
Yeah.
And then
I think, come on up, John, get a picture
Yep.
with the scholars. And Josh, where's Josh? Maybe you can help Coach get mic'd up. I think Valentine
Val and Drake have something.
Drake have a presentation that they would like to make.
Okay, that'll work. Thanks, Leah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Dr. Taylor, and a huge thank you to Team One for all the incredible work they've done to get the fan launched. It was a really easy job. I think I speak for Drake and I both that it was an easy thing to say yes to when they've set us up for success so well. But being that the organization is so green, we've spent a lot of time thinking ahead. What could this group potentially accomplish in the forthcoming future? Which inevitably begs the question, how would we measure if we did a good job? How would we know if we really had the impact that Team One had dreamed up for us? And how we measure impact of leadership programs is a question that I am hauntingly familiar with because it's one that Dr. Feagin had asked me about a year ago. We were sitting down chatting, just kind of shooting the breeze about leadership, covering a bunch of different topics. And at the end of our conversation, he looked at me and asked, Valentine, how do we know that what we're doing is working? How can we prove that the Feagin Leadership Program really is having an impact on changing healthcare for the better? And we verbally sparred on the topic for a bit, and we both agreed that looking at metrics like promotions, different titles scholars hold, their community involvement, number of publications on PubMed, none of it really added up to what a leader is and could prove the impact that our program has had on them and their lives and all of the patients that they've touched. So, in true attending fashion, Dr. Feagin told me to go research the answer and report back. And I didn't really have an answer. And that's not something you really tell attendings. I don't know. You say you're going to go find out. And so as the forum was approaching, I still didn't have an answer. So I decided to cheat a little bit. I thought if I could get Dr. Feagin to sit down with me once again and get him talking, that he'd answer his own question for me. Pretty clever, I thought. And it worked. So on this past Thursday, we sat down at the Washington Duke and just started chatting again. And I had this whole list of questions, and I was trying to be a reporter, the journalist I never was, and ask him really targeted things about his life to learn more about him. So I knew the answer was in there somewhere. And so I tried desperately to get Dr. Feagin to talk about himself, which is something that he never does. Because when you ask him a question, it's always about other people. So I asked him about his first leadership experience, which was when he was tight end and captain of his high school football team. But that story wasn't about him or their winning season, it was about his coach, who showed him what leadership really looked like. When I asked about his experience as the head team physician for Duke basketball, it wasn't about that and the work that he did. It was about what he learned from Coach K and all of their locker room talks. And even when I went for the jugular and asked about what his first date looked like, I went there. It was really a story about his grandmother and the values that she instilled in him and how to treat people with respect and the really cool classic car that upped his game a lot. So it occurred to me that despite all of the incredible, tangible work that Dr. Feagin has done for everybody in this room, for the healthcare community at large, to the other communities across the globe that he's impacted, his real mission in life is sharing the stories of everyone that he's ever met, this fabric of people that have touched his life and changed him for the better. And in sharing that with me and being able to share that with all of you, that's the real impact of the Feagin Leadership Program and all of the work that you've done. So for that, I thank you. So if we take that, if we take people and the narratives and the stories of their lives and sharing them with others as the real metric of leadership success, as what we use to measure the impact of programs like this one, like the Feagin Alumni Network moving forward, we thought an appropriate first move by the officially launched FAN program would be to honor someone whose story we felt was in line with the values and core concepts of the Feagin Leadership Program, identifying someone that was forwarding the work of Dr. Feagin. So as our first move as president and vice president of the Feagin Alumni Network, we are here to award the inaugural recipient of the John A. Feagin Leadership in Medicine Award, given to a Duke attending who we feel respects and will forward the work of Dr. John Feagin. So I hope that this was an appropriate answer to your question, Dr. Feagin, and if it wasn't, I'm hoping that naming the award after you gets me off the hook. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my fabulous Vice President, Drake Edwards, to tell you a little bit more about this year's inaugural recipient.
Thanks, Val, and thanks, Dr. Feagin. So the inaugural recipient of this award is Duke's own Dr. Ray Barfield. So if we can give him a round of applause real quick. somewhat fittingly, he's actually not able to be here today. You see, when reviewing nominees for this award, we weren't counting lines on a resume, we weren't counting letters after one's name, but instead we were looking for someone who, as Dr. Feagin likes to say, is known for doing the right thing for the right reason. And so Dr. Barfield isn't able to be here today, but he is doing something somewhat, or more important for sure. He's leading a conference with 1,500 other clinicians, clergymen, and educators to fight the opioid crisis in Appalachia and across our country. So they are determined to take real progressive steps to fighting this epidemic through bringing together faith communities, medical resources, and economic reform. As anyone who has met Dr. Barfield, this doesn't surprise you at all. He's an undeniable passion for healing and strives to continually serve his patients, coworkers, and community. In short, just like Dr. Feagin, I believe that Dr. Barfield is a great example of a medical leader, and I think this world would be a lot better if we had more physicians like them. And although he wasn't able to be here today, he did have a few remarks that I'd like to read to you. He said, "I have such enormous admiration for Dr. Feagin and for the work you all do in the Feagin Leadership Program. Your model for leadership is, to my mind, one of the brightest lights I have encountered in modern medicine. From the first time I was invited to meet the people in this program, I have pointed to the effort as an exemplar of how the culture of medicine can change for the better. The richness of this program's approach to leadership rests, in part, on the attention it pays to the well-being and flourishing of both patient and physician, something we urgently need right now. All of this is to say that I am deeply honored and humbled to accept this award. What a gift." So, once again, please join me in honoring Dr. Feagin for a lifetime of work and this year's recipient of the John A. Feagin Leadership in Medicine Award, Dr. Ray Barfield. Thank you.
I know Ray Barfield, and it makes it even a greater honor. Thank you so much.
I'm just overwhelmed and so proud of you, just like all the other teams. Can we follow that? I don't know if I can. I think you can. So what we're going to do now is a little bit of a surprise. We know who our keynote speaker is in the program, and everyone knows our men's basketball coach, Mike Krzyzewski. We're going to do this together, and you're going to help me through it.
I'm going to come up right now. Yeah. Come on, let's go right up here. Yeah. First of all, John, congratulations. And I don't know how, I know you know how lucky you are, but I'm going to tell you that you're even luckier to be associated with John. I've known him since I was 18 and a plebe at West Point, and he's been responsible for so many things in my life. But the main thing is to be an example of a humanitarian. You know, now you have the F something, you've coming up with all these different things. You got a coin after you right now, but he basically has been one of the best men on this planet during his lifetime. It's not just what he's done medically, it's what he's done all over the world to help people. And I'm so proud of my relationship with you and our family's relationship with you, even though you screwed up my left ankle. And I really think that was the cause of me having 2 hip replacements and 2 knee replacements. I'm over that though, because I actually feel pretty damn good. And But Dr. Feagin is a stud. He's a stud. And it's an honor for me to be a part of this every year. And we're in our 9th year. And Dean and I, along with Joe Doty, felt that to end the conference, it would be good to have an interaction. Dean and I have also been friends for a long, long time. And I'm proud of what he's done. I think it started out in honoring John. And it's turned into this. And it's turned into this because something that he would not allow it to just honor him. He sweats, you know, he gets prickly heat, and you know, he hates talking about himself. That's what Valentine just said that, and that's who he is. And what Dean has done with his team is absolutely amazing. You know, to see this thing grow and to watch how proud you all are of being a part of this and to carry on his legacy. And every time I've been here and have heard, obviously I'm not here for a whole conference. I know you're saying you should be, but I keep losing players, so you know, I got to get. You're only as good as your players, so, and then hopefully you're good enough for them. But every time I've been associated with it, what I've felt is a great sense of pride and innovation. I think you know from being in this, you know, you want to be on a team. Not every team is good, just so you know that. Some teams are never a team. They're just a group of people. Some teams hit a certain spot and they are satisfied. And then the championship teams, the truly special teams, know no ceiling. And basically what the Feagin team has done, you know no ceiling. And today is another example of improvement, of coordination, and get those old Feagin scholars up with it, huh? That graph was unbelievable. You know, just give them an email kicking a butt, man. And so that, you know, everyone's involved. You know, over the 38 years that I've been at Duke as the head coach, you know, we formed the family, and you have to keep working at it. You have to keep working at it. And as you work at it, my guys, we do different things. Like in a couple weeks, we're going to have a fantasy camp. And it's the 17th year for the fantasy camp. And there'll be 100 guys here and a couple girls, mostly in basketball, some in golf. And they pay a lot of money, and we help the Emily Krzyzewski Center. But I bring about 30 to 35 of my former players back. And so they network. I bring my current team there, so they network. And then they network with one another, and they network with the guys, with the people who are there. And so you need activities, you need events as you go forward. And what's happened then is my guys have formed what they call the brotherhood. You know, and they have shirts, they have things, they even let me have some of it. And it's a cool thing. And it's kind of like what I know how you feel right now when you see your team. It's your team. It's Feagin, right? It's his team, and you see your team doing great things. And basically, as a coach or a mentor, he's your mentor, or one of your mentors. For a mentor to see that happening is so fulfilling. You know, I know. Last night we had a chance to talk for a little bit, and it was so good to see you so excited. Yeah, so damn excited. And I tried to get rid of your sons for a while to just so you'd even be more excited, because they put a little downer on him. Yeah, tried to slip him a few more drinks so he'd be even more excited. But and this morning, as soon as I came in, I don't know the last time anyone told you that you had a glow. But when I walked in, there was a glow. I know there's always that above you, but you were glowing. And in watching, I watch him watching you. And it's so damn good. It's so good. And what you need to do is continue to take that energy as you go forward, because it's going to be a really, in your profession, in any profession, it's difficult. Your profession's difficult. Yeah, and you can, yeah, it's difficult. And if you can call upon, to me, that network is a lifeline for all you. You know, something that can help you in a dark moment. You are going to have dark moments. Anyone who does things to the extreme and with the pressure that you do it, you're going to have moments of doubt, moments of failure, feeling failure, where you're going through some stuff. And to call upon your brothers and sisters at those moments. To me, I see that as not just the information on how to get better, but in those moments, and look, it will happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. The thing is, you have to stop it right there. And basically, that leads me to what we're talking about today. You know, like leadership without authority, you know, like where you're not alone. You know, you're not alone in this. And in any leadership situation that you're in, to me, I think everybody has authority. Otherwise, you don't have a team. If somebody on your team doesn't feel they have the authority to do what's right at a moment's notice, then your team isn't as good as it needs to be. And so, in starting off today, what I'd like to ask Dean, and then we can go back and forth, is 9th year. Like, where are we at with all of this, with this Feagin team, and how has he seen it develop, and how has he tried to incorporate the lessons so that everyone on this team has the authority to do it? So how the heck did you do all this stuff?
Well, sometimes I don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's highlighted by the forum. And certainly this forum has highlighted what we've been able to do in influencing others and leading effectively without authority. Because like Jay and Derek yesterday talked about, they saw a need and they were passionate about addressing that need. And when I came back to Duke, I saw a need. We, in the military, are constantly hit with the idea that we need to be effective leaders, whether we're physicians, whether they're infantrymen, whether we're armormen like Marty Dempsey. And then when I came back to Duke, I saw a lot of, let's just say, less than effective examples of leadership in healthcare. And I think a lot of people know what I'm talking about. And that led to this idea and this passion, like Derek and Jay and talked about, to do something about it. And one of the things that happened on that journey to do something about it was this desire to also honor one of my mentors. And we heard a great discussion about mentors this morning with Bonnie and Erica, and how that relationship changes over time. And in honoring John, amazing things have happened. And as I think about the other lessons, not being afraid to ask people for help. Certainly this effort has been all about bringing people together. I asked you to help.
Right.
I've asked the people at the business school to help. I asked Duke Corporate Education and Leah to help. And that's one of the reasons why I thought this was so important for us here at Duke, was all around me, we had these tremendous resources in leadership. And we could use those leadership resources to tackle the problems in healthcare that we have today. And ultimately, it's led to this vision that we're gonna tackle the challenges that we have in healthcare by having more effective leadership, especially in physicians, because the physicians have given up their responsibility for that. And we need to get it back. We need to be at that table. And so those concepts that have come out of this forum are how we led Without Authority to build this program to where it's now the incubator and catalyst for so much more. Out of this program, as you've seen, is the model, the Duke Healthcare Leadership Model. Out of this program has come an entire curriculum in leadership development for the entire School of Medicine that others are emulating and learning from throughout the country. Out of this program has come a Duke University Hospital Leadership Academy that is providing leadership education for the administrators in the hospital. Out of this program is coming the 2019 National Healthcare Leadership Education Conference that we're going to host, that will provide a platform for all of us to tackle those problems that we have in healthcare through effective healthcare leadership education. So this forum, to me, has been a tremendous chance to reflect on how did we get here from this idea that, hey, leadership education is a part of what we need to do here at Duke, to now a national and global vision for how we're going to help healthcare. And so from my standpoint, it's been a tremendous journey. I said how proud I am of the scholars and the leaders.
I think what you all just did is an example of the theme of the conference.
Yeah.
And like, he didn't even know what the hell you did until you just showed him.
Exactly.
And you know, how the heck did that happen? What kind of leader is he? You know, he should have at least eavesdropped. By the way, Marty Dempsey, he did a cheap thing last night. No, I mean, he did a cheap thing during the talk, you know, using Polish and then Irish and when I'm not here. But yeah, I expect that from a retired general. But last night, I mean, it's like me coming up, Chicago, Chicago. No, man. I'm not going to do that to you. Put on a stinking hat and do that. And I think it was a really slippery way for him to promote his book, because he radically included that song in what he's doing. So anyway, it made me mad last night. You know,
so I have to tell you this, at the risk of embarrassing my wife. Coach is kind of, he can be a very funny guy. And you certainly make all of us laugh at appropriate times.
And hopefully not in many games.
Yes.
But in a few games.
Exactly. My wife told me that as we were coming up here, she said, now, don't try to be funny. You can handle that for us, I know, and you do a great job. But on the serious side of Marty Dempsey, you know, here's a guy, there's a military guy, and he came and talked to us about belonging and how the military has changed in the, you know,
right.
We've known each other since I was a plebe at West Point in 41 years ago.
Right.
And I had to try to remember all the coaches' names and pronounce them when the upperclassmen would say, "Who's the coach of the basketball team?" That's a challenge when you got 5 guys bearing down on you, and you have to remember how to say Krzyzewski when it doesn't look anything like Krzyzewski.
I think it looks exactly like it. It's like one of Laurel and Yanny, right? I still can't hear Laurel, just saying. Yeah.
But at that time in the military, with that hazing and everything else that we had, the military was extremely hierarchical.
Yeah, big time.
And as Marty pointed out, that's changed as the complexity of this world has changed. Now this distributed leadership is important, and belonging, and all that. In medicine, we're about 30, 40 years behind the military, and it's really hurting our profession. So what I wanted to ask you, Mike, is how have you been able to adopt kind of the same transformation like Marty talked about with your teams and all your leadership initiatives?
Yeah, you know, one thing, I'm not a big bureaucratic guy. I'm an entrepreneurial guy. So even as a cadet, it was difficult for me with a lot of rules. And it was in the late 60s, and actually a lot of the guys felt like you got a great education in leadership, but you also got a great education in how to get over, how to get, maneuver, how to maneuver. And so when I always wanted to be a coach. After 5 years in the military, I went to graduate school in Indiana, get my MBA, and after 1 year, I got to be a head coach at West Point. So I'm an MBA dropout, all right? And, but over the years, it just was so evident to me that if everything had to go through one person, we weren't going to do it. It was not the right use of talent. And then I know the Army calls it distributive leadership, or Bob Brown, agile and whatever. Right. Over the years, I just call it tiered leadership, and meeting the problem at the moment it occurs. In other words, is your organization good enough that if you and I have a problem, and we may be the so-called charts, so-called lowest level, we need to take care of it. And so I need to create an atmosphere, an environment in my program that empowers the people to do that, where whoever attempts to do that, I have their back. Believe me, it's an amazingly difficult thing to do. I didn't do it to the level that I needed to with this team that I just had, and we're 29-8. We're close, really close to being maybe winning a national championship. But I'm really not pleased with what I did. And I'm in the process right now of redoing our culture. Getting that. I'm missing something. I did a thing right after the season. We lost to Kansas in a very difficult game in the Elite Eight on a Sunday. On Monday, I met with all my managers. I have 14 managers, and they're the best kids in the world. They'll fight for you. They'll do anything for you. And I met with them, and I said, first of all, I thanked them. I had them in our theater that we have in our practice facility, and I said, and the 4 senior managers, are you guys all set? Yeah, this guy's going to Goldman, this guy's going, we want to make sure that they're all set. And then we talked for a while, and I said, look, my wife and I are going away, this was Monday, on Thursday for a few days. I would like each one of you independently to write up something for me. I need them by Thursday morning. What did you like? What didn't you like? What do you think would be an improvement? How do you guys who are older, did you see differences in the years in the 4 years that you've been here? And and be truthful, don't worry. I'm okay with good, medium, not so good. I think a culture needs to deal with the truth. And then you have to find out what you believe the truth is here, or here may not be here. Like you got to be on the same page. You got to be on the same page. And that's up to the leader to be on the same page. And so Wednesday morning, I got them all. That's what my managers do. Boom, I got them. It was really interesting. I gave copies to each of my staff, the guys on the staff. I said, you read them. When we come back, I want to talk about what they said. So I'm reading through them, a lot of good things. Thanks, Coach, for this. And I learned a lot in this. And there were some situations where they needed to interact with a player for a variety of things, and they didn't do it. And they felt disrespected by the player. And so when I got my staff together, I said, what do you think? So, well, you know, hey, we can improve here, here. I said, what about this thing? You know, a lot of them said this about, you know, not getting the respect. And said, well, and boom, they started to hammer the one or two players, you know, that they were talking about. And I said, boy, you're missing the boat. You're missing the boat. My thing is the biggest problem was the manager didn't confront the player. And in years before, my manager would have done it, and we would have taken care of it. And so what happens then, at any point in your organization, if you do not attack that problem, then it goes to another place. And then it goes to another place. And at the end of the day, the managers are feeling, and rightfully so, Coach K didn't, they're not blaming me, but Coach wasn't as accountable as he should have been. And they're right. At the end of the day, they're right. I mean, I'm the one responsible. But I want to know, how could I have taken care of that? And so a big thing for me is reclaiming our culture. And you got to work at it all the time. And so this theme of what we're discussing these 2 days is paramount to the establishment of a successful business team. It has to happen. You know, in ways, when I'm dealing with an older team like the U.S. team, we'll form standards and how we live, and I'll get input from different people. You know, I'll adapt to them, and they need to adapt to me. To give an example, on our first Olympic team, Jason Kidd, who's now retired and one of the great guards of all time, he was my captain and older, you know, and in our first practice, and he's really smart. He's really smart. And he comes up to me and he says, what do you want today for the practice? Yeah, what do you want from me? Which is a good thing, yeah, that's a cool thing. And I said, you know, why don't you do you? He said, what do you mean? I said, you just do you. I'm going to watch you. And let's see what you do. And so he said, you got to be, excuse me, you got to be kidding me. He didn't say it that way. But, and I said, no, I'm not kidding you. I want to watch. You're really good. And so we start the practice, and we're doing these drills, and Kobe Bryant and LeBron James are going down the lane, running the lanes, and Kid is going, the ball's going everywhere. Ball's going everywhere. So I said, oh, maybe I shouldn't have told him that. So I brought them together, and I said, yo, what's going on? And Jason says, look, I'll tone it down. And Kobe Bryant and LeBron and Carmelo, all those guys said, no, do not tone it down. We've never played with anybody like you. You're really good. Let us take our talents. And so on every team that you're going to be on, there's going to be that nurse practitioner, the nurses, the whatever. They're really good. Are they ever given an opportunity to show you how to get better? With Duke, a long time ago, we had this kid Battier on our team, you know, and Wooden Award winner, national champion, or whatever. His senior year, we're in the first practice, and they stretch, and they're just about to warm up. So they get together, and they usually say something. Then I say something to them. And so they get together, and Shane says something to him. And I'm saying, well, I don't think I can say anything better than what he said. So I said, okay, let's go. So after practice, I brought him over, and I said, that was pretty good. I said, do you think you can keep doing that? And he said, yeah, I'll speak the truth. And the rest of the year, I never spoke to the team in that setting. It was his. And what that led to, there's leadership and function, and there's real-time leadership, okay? So when you're playing your game in the operating room, it's real time, okay? You can talk about things here and discuss it and say, you should have done this and you should have done that. Real time, real time. And what that did for Shane is he became a better leader in real time for me. Even as a coach, I can get him at a timeout, at a free throw, or whatever. But if you have a guy out there or guys out there who are doing it and feel comfortable in doing it. So when you're saying about a surgeon, look, you have to have your blinders on. But you can't have your blinders on to the talents of your team. You know, and at times, are somebody in that operating room, are they going to tell you something in a second because you're human and you might be not doing it as well as you could? Or they see something in you emotionally that you're not the same person, that where they can affect on you. And that's what I want with my team, that whatever we're doing in all this time, in real time, we can go. We can go. And that's when you win and lose, in real time. And so I'm a huge believer in empowering my team to do that. And I call it owning. I don't know, Marty gives a different word.
Belonging.
Belonging. He couldn't use own because it's mine. And belonging, yeah. Owning is better. You know, if you, no.
Radical inclusion.
No, look. If I own this chair and you try, come over, no, don't. But if you try to take it away from me, I'm going to fight you. If I just belong here, come on and take my chair. You know, no, if you own something, you'll fight for it, right? You know, you don't rent it. You know, it's not a vacation home or whatever. Your team has to be owned by everybody. And if it's owned by everybody, then everybody will fight, and everybody in a moment's notice might tell one another at different levels because it's theirs. Let me give one more example of ownership. This is a really easy, cool thing to do. I don't do it with every team, but every once in a while I do it. So, in a locker room, no one's in the locker room. I walk through the locker room, put a piece of paper on the floor, okay? Guys come in for practice. They practice, they shower, they leave. I come back later, is the paper up, okay? I'm not going to say in which season or whatever. In one of the seasons, the paper's not up. So at the end of the day, I pick up the paper. Next day at practice, I said, yesterday, did any of you see a piece of paper on the floor? And none of them are going to say. I said, come on, man. Some of you saw the damn piece of paper on the floor. You know, now you don't want to say it because you didn't pick it up. Now, why didn't you pick it up? You know, you didn't pick it up because it's not your paper. That's why you didn't pick it up. I picked it up. You know why I picked it up? Because it's my floor. It's my floor. And we're not going to be a good team unless it's my floor. Unless it's your floor, and your floor, and your floor. In other words, get rid of the singular pronouns. It's our floor. It's our operation. It's our patient. It's our, that's it. And that's what you're trying to do in getting this whole thing going. And when it happens, it's incredibly beautiful. And not beautiful, it's incredibly beautiful because it's not common. What you're trying, and what you do, you don't want to be common. If I'm coming in as a patient, I don't want you to be common. I want you to be as uncommon as possible. And I want everybody who's in there, fighting for me. And I'm not saying it's not, that we're all the way down, but to do that every day, or not every day, but so many days, if you don't have your whole team included in it, wow, what I do is so much easier than what you do. It is, because it's not human life. And so when you're talking about these things, it's even more, it's the ultimate importance for you to do that. And I think it's very difficult, for someone with the expertise of a surgeon. You're so darn good at that sometimes you got to be careful that you don't lose track of the people around you that can help make you better, and where every once in a while you ask a nurse, what would you do right now? Is there something we're doing right now that you think we can do better? And then if they come up with a suggestion, when the leader says, man, that's a good idea, let's do it. How cool is that? We as human beings want to be recognized for what we think. That's the ultimate compliment. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then if we incorporate what you think, how good does that make you feel? It's the best. It's the best. So, when the theme of this conference is so darn important, what you guys have been discussing, it's incredibly important.
And we learn so much from you every year. One of the very first ones we talked about delegating, and you said, I never talk about delegating, I talk about empowering. And today, this idea of ownership, I think, is another step as we think about this. We were talking earlier this week about how we create that sense of ownership in our own clinical teams. And I'm fortunate to have some members of my clinical team here for our clinic and for our operating room. And I've been able to create that sense of ownership from things I've learned from you throughout the years, whether it's as team physician, whether it's at these conferences, like creating joint standards, like taking the input and recognizing that and congratulating our team members, like having coaches, because when we're in that operating room, we can't see what's going on behind us. If we're looking at that patient, we can't see what the rest of the team is doing outside of that examination room. So I had Walt Curl, my first orthopedic mentor, come and be a coach and help me understand the things that we could do better, both in taking care of patients in the operating room, in teaching, and that's been invaluable. And where I was 10 years ago is so bad compared to where I am now. We spend so much time focused on the technical aspects of medicine and surgery, and we ignore all these other team building things. And the things that I've learned from you and from the scholars and from everybody else as part of this has made our teams so much better. And it's creating that sense of ownership that really does it. You won't remember this, but
just because I'm 71, I still remember some things.
Well,
is that I thought Marty Dempsey was the only guy who's gonna.
Well, when I was a team physician at West Point, taking care of the basketball team, probably when Elton Brand was here, you brought the team up to play at Army.
Right.
And I hadn't seen you for a while. I was the resident that traveled with the team under Frank Bassett for a couple years in the late 80s. And I walked into the Duke practice, and Mike gave me a big hug, like he hadn't seen me forever. and he remembered me, and those things create that sense of ownership and belonging, and I felt so empowered to be part of your team then.
I also stole his wallet. I'm from Chicago and no longer a cadet, where you could lie, cheat, and steal. All right, so.
But you have that great ability to make everybody feel like they're so important when you first meet them, and there's someone else in this room who does it even better. And John, I want you to come on up here, because I want you to join our discussion. So come on up here. So John Feagin, as everybody in this room probably knows, when you first meet him,
here, sit down right here.
He makes you feel like you are so special and the most important person there. He creates that sense of belonging or ownership.
Thank you.
That then you're on his team for life. You're a fan for life, to borrow a term. And so this discussion is incomplete without having John up here. That's why we have him up here. His pearls on leading without authority are distributed on your table. We're not going to be able to get to all of those, but I want you all to know that he took the time to give us some of his ideas on this topic. But what I want to ask you and Coach both is, how do you do that? How do you make those people feel so special when you first meet them?
I'll read from what you have on the table. Another perspective that I treasure is a result of the hundreds of locker room talks with Coach K, the most effective communicator I have ever known. And I've had great mentorship. And one of the joys of mentorship is passing the torch to the next generation. And seeing Dean evolve as the next generation and the leader has been one of the great joys of my life. And Coach K, I'll never forget the hundreds of times that I watched game films with you and slept through it, but you forgave me. And I appreciate what you've added to all of our lives through your ability to communicate. Thank you.
See, he passes the ball right away. You know, that's the thing. But you know, one of the things with John, and I think everybody should do it, is that they're lifelong learners. They not just about medicine or about basketball, but more importantly, they're lifelong learners of people and communication, and you know how you come together, and how he's never looked at what they call different generations. Like I really don't know what the hell a millennial is. You know, like why? All I know is that I'm coaching kids that I'm 54 years older than, and if I think they're pretty good. You know, I think they're smart. They don't have the attention span that some other teams did, but they, you have to show them a little bit more. But they're tough. They want to be good. You know, they'll work. Well, I don't know what the difference is. You know, I think the difference is sometimes in the objects we have that we can communicate with, and so it affects how we communicate. But what we communicate should not be affected. So I think if we keep putting barriers like that, and sometimes there's barriers, and then like when I speak to businesses and that, I always ask them, you know, do your 50-year-old people in your organization talk to the 30-year-olds? Do the 30-year-olds talk to the 40-year-old? I mean, do you talk to one another? Well, I don't know how to, well, that's the problem. And the problem is in communication and the forms of communication. You know, like for me, I'm not saying I'm this whiz on all the stuff that's happening, but I know a little bit. So, I follow all my guys and all my recruits on Twitter, Instagram, on an alias, you know, and you know, I'm texting, or you know, every night I text with at least 1 to 4 kids that we're recruiting or my own players. I send Bitmojis, I do different things, and you try to get into that world. Now, I'm not on Snapchat. I don't want to have those intimate talks. You know, none of the kids use FaceTime. I mean, on Facebook. I mean, they do FaceTime. And a bad thing is when they call you on FaceTime, and like, it's a dirty trick. You know, you should check on that. But, you know, as we go for, it's up to us to bridge the communication gap. And once we do that, then it's the same stuff, man. You know, it's really not that different. I think we put so many barriers and say, well, that's different, they're different, and we can't do this. And no, you can do all that. And by the way, I want to hear what you have to say, because you might say something like, I'm a teacher. I want to learn from my students. I want to get excited about my students. And they'll bring something out in me. If you're a teacher and all you do is lecture, then you're not a teacher, you're a lecturer. You know, you should get interaction with all the talent. That's why this thing is so good. You all are able to share things. You're not just writing a paper or doing a project, you know, on your own. You're sharing different things. You're sharing best practices. That's what he's done his whole life. That's what he's done his whole life. That's why he's improved and why he's so damn unique. Because it has never been about him. It's been about medicine. It's been about the knee. It's been about the team. It's never ever been about him. And has he communicated with you pretty well? Of course he has. You should get him on this network. No, really. No, just shut up for a second.
Yes, sir.
You should get him once a week at least, or questions to Dr. Feagin. And as he wrote out these things, get them in by Wednesday, and on Friday, stuff like that. Wouldn't you want to hear from him? I mean, and then what that does, I would want that if I'm him, so you better want it, because that keeps me engaged. I want to continue to be relevant and use the incredible knowledge that I've attained for my entire life, and through the medium of questions and answers, a lot of that will be put forward. I think if you don't do something like that, then I think that's a mistake. So I'm giving you homework. So.
All right, quick story with a moral to it. You just heard, as I sit here, another perspective that I treasure is the hundreds of locker room talks with Coach K, the best communicator I've ever known. But I want to tell you about his first locker room talk, which I was privileged to be at. I was team doctor. He was Cadet Krasuski, and our coach, it was Coach Bobby Knight, who had just put the chair into the 17th floor or row. And so we were behind 8. We were ranked as a basketball team #1. He was team in the country. He was team captain. Coach Knight was coach. And he'd gotten our attention by putting that chair up 17 rows, I think it was. And so coach is screaming at his team captain in the locker room because we're behind 18 points and we're #1. And I'll never forget it. Finally, Coach Knight says, with a few expletives, "You're the team captain, so get up and say something to the team." And Cadet Krasuski stands up and he looks at his team and his mouth opens, nothing comes out, and he sits down. And that was his first locker room talk. Oh, privileged to be there.
And I think the moral to that.
It's called fear.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want. Fear leadership is no longer alive and well.
No.
All right.
But the moral, and you even said it yourself, which some of you may have missed it. Coach earlier said that he fails at this not infrequently.
Yeah.
And we all fail at it. And it's that's how we learn, by challenging ourselves. I fail every day at this leadership stuff. It's hard.
One thing though,
really
with that,
hard.
if you see a teammate on the journey to failure, stop it. You know, like you can be a friend that after something happens, you show care and whatever. But if you know each other well enough, if a team, look, I've had teams like they catch it before there's failure. You know, they catch it. They sense moods of people. You know, like she's not right now. You know, you're not right. Yeah, I am right. No, you're not. And you have that confrontation. You shouldn't be afraid. The confrontation is just meeting the truth head on. And so it's the truth. You're not, look, I'm not picking, but you have to have a relationship before. So then someone says, well, man, you're always on me. Well, you can't just say it when there's failure. As there's success, you say, man, that's good. Holy mackerel, what you did or whatever. And so what it is, it's that word called real. There's no BS. There's no BS. It's all real. And the sooner it becomes real, the easier and the better it is to get it right. And that's what I try to, and again, do you fail in that? Yeah, but hopefully not too much. And if you fail at it, you should then talk about it. Why did we? Why did we fail? And then not let it happen again. So
it's a learning experience, right? And to quote you, failure's not our destination.
Right.
And you know, it's a process that we all go through and we get better. In other words, there's a book called The Obstacle is the Way. You reach those failures, those obstacles, you learn from them. It's a growth experience. It's sometimes we lose sight of that. We're going to open it up for questions here because I know you want to say something, but as you're saying something, I want you all to be thinking about your questions because as we learned throughout yesterday and today, some of the best pearls have come out of the discussion with our community of leaders. So after John goes, we're going to open up for questions, I think.
I want to address a point that's unique with Cadet Krasuski here.
He likes saying that, doesn't he?
Everyone in this room has had their mother say to him or her, listen to what they're saying. And that's what we grew up with. But besides listening to what they're saying, the unique feature of Coach K's ability that I have lived with is he listens to what he says and he hears what he says, and there's a feedback loop in his mind so that I've seen him walk into a group of parents of players where, you know, he never met the parents, but each parent gets a message. And that feedback loop that he develops in his communication is nearly unique. And that is hearing himself say something and then evaluating and feeding off what he's just said and improving it. Unique quality.
Questions out there? Teresa.
I'm Teresa Williamson. I'm a neurosurgery resident. And Coach K, I heard you talk at the Peri-Op event as well, and you talked about being direct there too. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have in surgery and in the hospital in general is we've completely lost our ability to be direct with each other, especially throughout levels. And through that, I think we've made some systems to be indirect, like the SRS reporting system, where you can kind of type in the computer how you feel about an interaction, and then you might hear about it 6 months later. So I wonder what the steps are you're going to tell your team to be able to be more direct. For example, those managers confronting the players, and then your thoughts on how you go about changing that.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a great question, and every organization has to answer that. And I can tell you that some years everything goes right, you know, and so you're constantly evaluating it. So I know what I have to deal with right now, and I have a thing where we have standards meetings and stuff like that, and I did that a lot with all the time with the U.S. team and their men, and I've done it with my Duke teams, but I had older guys who already had standards of our program. And with what I've noticed in the last couple of years for me that I haven't adjusted to is I'm not getting my infrastructure and an older guys teaching the standards. And it's not their fault, it's my fault. I should recognize that. And so when we do standards this year, they'll be my standards. And I'm going to teach standards instead of asking them. But the first two are always look each other in the eye and tell each other the truth. And then you look at about a month ago, my staff were very close friends with Jason Garrett, the head coach of the Cowboys. They've come up here and watched us and practice and that. And we went down there for a day just to see what they're doing motivationally and whatever. And it gave us some ideas in how to get this done. And I've really, this last week, I've had really tough talks with every upperclassman who's coming back. I mean, big time talks. And sometimes the basketball gods or whatever, I've been in this, sometimes things work out. The day of the last talk, I got a book sent to me from one girl, Molly, one of our cheerleaders, graduated, and her mother and father, they own a ranch in Montana, sent me a book called Cowboy Ethics. It is so damn good. I mean, the pictures are beautiful, but then all of a sudden there's 10 things like ride for the brand, anyway, and I said, simple, like my standards may not have been as simple. So now I'm in the process with my staff of incorporating what are going to be not as many, but are there 10 things, 8, 9, or whatever, simple that everyone does. And then the Cowboys do a thing Jason has outside of his office, their stuff right here, and it's the team doesn't sign it. Everybody on the infrastructure signs it. And then they can hold each other responsible. I'm not, something, you have to take the time to do that. All this computer stuff and email and all that, what Marty said yesterday, it has to be face-to-face. And then it can go to the other. Obviously, you don't have a lot of time. And someone said, well, we don't have the time to do that. Then that's wrong. You have to make the time to do that so you don't feel like what you're feeling right now. That feeling is not, if I'm I'm in this audience, I don't want anyone on my team to feel that way, right? I mean, so, but it's constant vigilance because you get turnover too, right? And then you have to, then as you get turnover, that's where my turnovers happen so fast that my fail-safe older players, it hasn't worked to the level that again, we're 29-8 and we're really good and whatever. But I don't want to be 29-8. I want to be undefeated and I want to win the national championship. So that's what we're going for. And you all want to win every game, right? So, I mean, yeah. And we want you to win every game.
So, Teresa, you may think, and I'm sure a lot of people think, Coach has got all this time. He's got all this time with his players to do this. This is something I learned from him. Where's Stacy? She just took off. So, with my clinic team, each year, we go out to lunch, and we look at our standards. We say, okay, what are our standards? What are our standards going to be for this year? And it creates that ownership, like you talked about. And so we can do it in medicine too. And then, if you've had those relationship building sessions, you've set those standards together, then you can have those difficult conversations where one member of the team or another member of the team says, hey, you're not living up to our standards that we as a team created. And so you can do it. It's not easy.
One suggestion along with that is, as you have them, whatever they are, then each week celebrate one of them. So they're repetitive. We use words. Like, are there words that strike something for the culture that you're living? And the words give character to the culture. The standards are great, but key words, if you own them, gives the character of the culture. And we've lost that a little bit in my thing right now. And I'm changing that right now. Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, like enthusiasm, loyalty, and like I'll do a thing with my team, even the U.S. team, and you may not believe this, but it's true. Like, you get these high-level guys, and I said, the word for today is enthusiasm. I said, for 10 seconds, just close your eyes and picture yourself enthusiastic. Put a picture in your mind, and what face and attitude would you have? And then during that day, I might point that out. Or from tape, courage, dirty work, whatever, the words of your culture, and then even to have a picture of them. Or say you just had this incredible operation where one of those words, urgency. And obviously a lot of urgency, but in this particular one, urgency, and then the whole team responded. Then celebrate, we just did urgency, really good. And then where everyone feels good, it's reliving that, and it's addictive, I think. Just like bad things can be addictive, good things can be addictive. But you have to have repetitive, just like in any addiction, there's repetition. And addiction is not bad if it's for good stuff.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Barry. I'm a first-year medical student, and Coach K, it's an honor to see you speak. I'm a little starstruck right now. Big Duke basketball fan. So you talked a little bit about some of the teams that, like, when they just kind of get it, it's like incredibly beautiful. And I was wondering if you noticed that those teams, it was kind of like that right away, and if not, what you noticed specifically about how that team evolved together to get to that point.
They never are there. They're never that right away. And that's my problem right now. I only have some of these guys for 9 months. And whereas John Shire and Nolan Smith, those guys, they went through failure. They had hard times. They learned through experience. And then all of a sudden, they were older. They had succeeded and failed together. They all took responsibility, and they became believers over a period of time. It's tougher in a short period of time to get the belief that you need to be really special, and that's what I'm going through right now. And again, we've been really good. It's not like, I mean, we win all these games and we're right there, but we got to take it to a different level. And that's why I'm starting early. That's why I got on these guys this week. And we're devising individual toughness plans for each one of my guys. And then we're responsible for that. You know, I have 2 of them coming in early. They're going to be managers during our summer camp, so they know what a manager does. Because I didn't think that they learn to respect the managers during the year. And then if they do that, then they go to step 2. And we're going to, the level of commitment from each one of these kids is going to be increased exponentially, and we're gonna get it done. But each you got to put them through tough things. You got to put them through tough things, and I'd rather put them through tough things and not lose. You know, and if we lose, then I'm going to use the loss constructively. But and here's the thing for all in the older people in here, and then some say, well, I already did that, so you got to do it again. You know, I'm 70. That's where I find out, do I still want to coach? It's easy to coach a game. You know, and you like, are you willing to do all this crap? You know, are you willing to do all the preparation that it takes? Not just to hang on or be okay. Are you willing to do all the things necessary to be special? I am ready to do that, and but I've learned a lot with it, and when it happens, man, it's so good. And then the relationships that you have with those people last forever. You know, that's why all my staff are my guys. You know, I've gone through stuff with Carrawell and James and Smith and Shire, and now we're friends. We're there, but we went through that, and they need to teach more about what it is to be a Duke basketball player and a champion, and the commitment. And so they all have to get tougher too, and they're ready to do it. We are ready to do this, and we're gonna do it. You know, we're gonna do it, and it's started already. So everyone said, "Well, what are you doing now?" I'm not doing anything, just shooting the crap with John Feagin here and having a few drinks.
Well, we're looking forward to that. We have time for one more. One more question, Rita. I'm sorry, Rita.
My name is Rita Baumgartner. I'm a 4th-year orthopedic surgery resident. Dr. Taylor, Dr. Feagin, Coach K, thank you so much for your comments. Coach K, I'd like to get your perspective on dealing with somebody who is on your team but maybe doesn't want to be there, isn't bought in, you know, how to try to approach that maybe both from a player's perspective and also from a coach's perspective.
Well, the very first thing is, you know, where are you at your team? Are you the leader of that group or whatever? Are you a team member? You know, one, I think you confront and say, like, look, is something going on? You know, because don't perceive that something that they don't want to be a part of the team. Find out what the hell's going on. And like, is there something with family? Is there something health? Is there emotion? Everyone, you know, we're human beings. Something can go wrong, that changes their perspective on things. And they say, well, and be honest, you know, if there's not, then you got to get rid of them or her or it, you know, whatever. But understand that what happened, I can tell you personally, 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, I did not have, I had 2 bad knees, and I was tired all the time. I didn't have a good attitude, and I didn't, I mean, I had the attitude I needed to have. And at the end of the year, I was just completely exhausted, and I didn't do my best. And so I'm thinking, I need to stop this. And I got these 2 knee operations. I'm the freshest I've ever been. No, in 10 years. And then I don't coach USA basketball anymore, which for 11 years, even though somebody says that's easy, if you're responsible every day of your life, you're thinking you can't lose. And you're the person. So my perspective is different. Now, shoot, I'm not thinking of an end game. And so I find out about that and then offer to help. You know, offer to help. And if they don't want that, maybe try someone else. You know, because it might be a man and a woman, and a woman and a woman. Yeah, you know, people communicate differently with different people. And but if there's no communication, then the team can't afford to have somebody. I tell all my guys, like, if you want to be here, you should leave. You know, I'm not going to beg you to stay here. And if you allow that, you're going to keep compensating, right? And it's going to keep being a distraction. And that can't happen. No one is that important. No one's that important to be a pain in the butt. They're not. Nobody. The head guy, the head girl, nobody's that important. No one's that important.
I think that's an important thing to take back to our practices. Rhino, who was it over here? Bill, we do have time for one more question.
With the one and done concept, and we're all addressing that, what did Villanova do that we haven't yet? I mean, they had four-year players, and so what are you planning to learn from Villanova?
I'm not going to learn anything from Villanova. Jay and I are good friends. Villanova studied our program for the last 10 years. You know, they just have had nobody. You know, do you think they wouldn't recruit a kid like Bagley? You know, they just couldn't get him. Now they've won. Like, they have 4 kids in the draft right now. They're going through right now what we went through 7 years ago. And then see how that, now, they were terrific. I love Jay and I love what they did. But also, we're within a bucket of playing them. And I wouldn't just say that they were going to beat us. Now, they might have. I think we could have beaten them too. Then would you be asking Jay Wright, what is he doing? No, I mean, you can do these things with sport. You know, all I know is in the last 7 years, they've won 2 and we've won 2. You know, and they're really good. I'm not going to model myself after anybody. You know, just like this mentorship and all that. You don't want to be the mentor. You don't want to be, you want to take things. You got time for a quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm a young coach, 1984. It's a long time ago. And the Summer Olympics is in LA. And I've been the head coach at Duke for 4 years. And Coach Knight is coaching the team. I'm not on the staff. I'm the scout. I have a room in the airport Marriott with videotape machines and all that. And I'm scouting every opponent. And then I give them the scouting report. And one night, I'm at dinner. There are 4 of us. Me, Coach Knight, Mr. Iba, who is one of the great coaches of all time from Oklahoma State, and Pete Newell. Coach Newell was one of the greatest teachers. I'm sitting there just saying, pretty lucky guy. And I just keep my mouth shut, and I'm talking, and sorry, I worked out just before I came here. I got a cramp. And Coach Knight leaves, and Mr. Iba and Coach Newell said, you know, you're a good coach. Don't try to be us. Take what you think you can get, but be yourself. And that's what I would tell all of you. You know, and by the way, the mentor gets a lot from the mentees, or else the mentor is not a good mentor. And that's the combination of things. But don't try to be somebody. Be you, and learn from everybody. You know, that's a key thing in what you're doing. When I got the job here, Coach Bubis was the coach here in the 60s. Great coach. In the 60s, Duke was one of the top 3 programs in the United States. And he passed away about 2 months ago. And I spoke at his funeral. They were good friends. When I got the job, he said, I got one bit of advice for you. Don't look down the road. Because at that time, Dean Smith, and their program is a great program, but Dean was, looked upon as the guy along with Knight. And he says, don't just try to beat them. You develop your and I believe that. Look, the Carolina game's big for us, but that's not a championship. Yeah, and those bit of advice, even competitively, don't try to beat one department or another hospital or whatever. Be you. Be you. And that's what we've tried to do all the time. And you got a better chance of being you than someone else. And do it that way. So that would be my advice for it.
I think that's a great point to end on. And I can't be John Feagin. I can't be Mike Krzyzewski. None of us can be those guys. But I think we've all, today and throughout our lives, for many of us, taken a bit from each of you. And so I'm grateful for both of you and what you've given to my life. And Mike and I have a gift for you, John, because I think, speaking on behalf of Coach, we've both taken a lot from you in our lives. So, from Coach K and...
Oh, my goodness. Oh.
Can we get together here?
What a treasure.
They put the good-looking guy in the middle.
Thank you. Oh. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, what a lovely.
Now, I'm going to give you the last word ultimately, but there's a few things that we still have to do, okay? The first thing is the Feagin Alumni Network wanted to say thanks to Coach.
Oh, thank you.
You've got to do it with the handshake, Brian.
I don't have, I owe you all a drink. I have good wine, too.
And I think we have a gift for you. Valentine has a gift for you.
For me? Yes. Oh, for me. All right. I know, but you should be getting all. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you.
And I sincerely want to thank you for everything you've done today and throughout the years for this program as a friend, as a mentor, and as somebody that brings a tremendous amount of love to John Feagin and all of us.
That's easy.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
you're
you
welcome.
very much.
Thank you.
John, please.
The one thing that we all share, whether and the energy or the enthusiasm of table one there, or the 8th decade, like my brother-in-law and I here, is the quality of time. And I think one of the things that I've gotten from the last 2 days together, which I really treasure with you all, is a talk with General Dempsey when he talked about white time, protecting your white time and using it valuably. And I hadn't really thought about that term before, but in avoiding burnout or giving less than the best, that quality of white time in your life and the quality of being inquisitive and retaining your inquisitivity, it's so precious. And then last of all is the point of that I learned from Coach K is the way he hears what he says, goes to school on that, what he says, and he says the same thing a second time, but he improves it the second time. Guard the quality of it. Anyway, Dean, thank you. The joy of working with you and this team, and the privilege of being with you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Want to sit down? Got a couple things to do. First, I'm going to turn it over to Leah to give us just a short wrap up, and then I have a few concluding remarks, as is the prerogative of the chairman. Not this year. Is that one working?
All right. That's okay. I got it. All right. It's nice when a plan comes together, isn't it? Right? Go team. I was jotting down my own notes from the themes that came out of today, and sure enough, they followed the theme. They followed the plan, right? So I have 4 that I jotted down in my notebook. Let's see if yours are similar. The first is the value of defining a mission, defining your vision as the place to start, right? Getting really clear on what that destination looks like, what you want to achieve. Something that's compelling, that people want to believe in, that they want to take ownership of, right? It's not my piece of paper, it's our floor. The second is being willing to take a risk because of that thing that matters. Putting yourself out there, having the courage, writing that letter to get overseas, to do that thing, right? And then not being afraid to ask for help. When you want to influence, when you want to see that thing through, you got to ask for help. You got to talk to your people, right? The fan network, talking to the other alumni, talking to the Feagin team about what was possible, to be able to think bigger than what you originally thought was possible. Getting attendees to the healthcare summit, right? That's hard work. You need people. You need your network to get that done. I loved Eric's point about the research and mentoring, that it starts with the courage of the mentee to ask, to stand up and reach out and ask a question. And then, once we've done that, the value of connections, the value that we get from those genuine relationships, right? It's ultimately about that invitation that we put out there and our ability to say yes to that, and what saying yes creates for people, that sense of belonging, that sense of ownership beyond belonging. And then utilizing what everybody brings so that we're all contributing together to make it really work. to own it, to deliver on it. And then, as leaders and teachers, continuing to learn from our students, from those around us, from our mentees, from those we're influencing. That's what I took away from today, again, that for me just built on what we heard yesterday. So again, as I said this morning, I think it's still ringing in my ears. Let's make it matter. Dean.
Not so fast, come on up. So we also, this is where I get to thank everybody and my partner for throughout this whole year and for many years now. Leah has been fabulous and her whole team at Duke Corporate Education. So thank you. We have a gift for you.
Oh, it is my pleasure. It is my pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks, Val. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Dean.
Thanks, Leah. And I need to thank all our partners, not just Duke Corporate Ed, but all our partners that we have and all the contributors to this program. Thank you for everything that you do. I want to thank our advisory board that's so capably led by Walt Curl and Kathy and Dolcic. Thank you. You guys really guide us as to where we need to go. I want to thank Joe Doty, our executive director. Let's give Joe a hand. Joe's been making sure everything works, and he's my partner in all this. And thank you, Joe. Thank you. I want to thank the coaches. You know, we thank the coaches. The teams did, but Bill Morley, Jane Boswick-Caffrey, Cecily Peterson, Joe Doty, and who am I missing? David Bond, who's in South Africa. You guys, phenomenal. I want to thank the scholars. I'm so proud of all of you. I can't put it into words, just how proud I am of all of you. I want to thank our team, Stacy, Cindy, Heidi, Rachel. I see Cindy back there. Raisa. There's Heidi. Thank you, guys. Thank you. You made this thing work. It seems seamless, but the reason it seems seamless was because of all their efforts, especially led by Cindy and Stacy. So I want a round of applause for them. Thank you. And last but not least, Ann, come on up. So you may have missed it, but when the FAN team presented their categories of the competencies that they learned most from in the Feagin Leadership Program, they talked about mentoring being one, emotional intelligence being two, but number 3 was etiquette. And Ann is our etiquette instructor. And we don't call it etiquette as much as we call it professional presence. But she does so much more for this program, and you're my true partner. And I couldn't do it without you. So thank you. And finally, John, you can have the last word if you want it, but as always, you're an inspiration to all of us. You're a personal inspiration to me. And without you, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing to make healthcare in this world better. So thanks for that inspiration, and thank you.
For once, I don't have the last word. I just thank all of you all for the two-way exchange, the feedback, the inquisitiveness, the quality of the time we've shared. You know, we talked about white time, and we got that great, our two guest speakers, Coach K and General Dempsey, and and how you apportion your white time is what I've learned from this. And I really appreciate the way the scholars have participated. And I know we're getting a bit of value where the scholars of today will be the alumni leaders of tomorrow. And I thank you for that.